Welcome to NeuroNap Academy. Tonight you will discover the most relaxing facts about your brain so you can unwind, let go, and drift to sleep a little wiser than you were yesterday. Maybe today felt heavy, harder than most. That's okay, you're here now, in a safe place. In this journey, you'll uncover how your brain holds hidden switches that quiet stress instantly, and why even the very systems meant to protect you can sometimes keep you awake instead. But did you know your brain literally erases and edits memories while you sleep, reshaping who you are without you realizing it? If you don't understand how this process works, you might wake up lighter or carrying more weight than you should. Tonight we'll reveal facts like this, each one reshaping how you see your own mind. Take a slow breath. Let's begin with the first quiet truth. When your surroundings feel predictable, upper regions of your mind send gentle braking signals to the small almond-shaped alarm evaluator deep inside. Instead of sounding sirens at every creak, it shortens and softens its alerts, allowing thoughts to pass without grabbing them. You don't need to force stillness. You offer a few cues of safety, a tidy corner, a repeated evening step, and your biology adjusts its volume. And here's the small hook that matters for the next point. That volume knob isn't just emotional, it's chemical. You might be surprised to know that a tiny blue broadcaster in your brainstem modulates how on guard you feel by sprinkling a wakeful chemical more when life is unpredictable and less when patterns are steady. As your evening becomes familiar, that drizzle eases and attention stops gripping so hard. The sensation is subtle, edges of thought feel less sharp, small sounds feel less important. This is your system concluding, no urgent news, and coasting uses less fuel. But if chemistry is part of the story, then body signals are too. So the next calm fact follows naturally from the skin you live in. Here's the next gentle datum: warmth at your hands and feet, and a light, steady pressure like a soft blanket tell your nervous system that resources are sufficient and no defensive posture is required. These inputs tip the body toward rest and digest functions, slower heartbeats, smoother breath, fewer tight muscles. Your brain reads these sensations as context, not just comfort. They are evidence that things are okay. In effect, a warm layer and a hug-like weight become a language of reassurance. And that language isn't spoken by objects alone. People speak it too, often without words, which leads to a social pivot with physiological teeth. Consider this. Friendly facial cues and softer voices recruit a network that synchronizes face, heart, and breath into a more connected state. With safety and company, the body spends less energy guarding and more energy settling. Even a recorded voice at a gentle pace can engage this circuitry. Late at night, the messenger's tone matters as much as the message. If your media companions signal goodwill, your physiology hears it. And once the body begins to settle in this social safety, there's one more quiet lever you can pull from inside. No equipment, no app, just a few syllables arranged with honesty. Did you know that putting a simple label on what you feel, tired, overfull, uneasy, done for today, organizes the raw signal and slows the alarm cascade? Language networks help file the experience so it stops knocking at every door. You're not denying anything, you're giving it a container, and containers reduce spill. A small sentence becomes a biological intervention. This is heaviness after effort. The moment it's named, the body spends fewer resources guessing. And here's the connecting thread that ties everything so far. None of these levers acts alone, and none needs to hit zero. Together they form a distributed dimmer, and that has an important, practical consequence for your evenings. Think of your calm system not as a single switch, but as a set of sliders: the alarm evaluator, the blue broadcaster's chemistry, the skin's comfort reports, the social safety network, and the naming power of words. Each one moving a little makes a lot. You don't need perfect conditions, you need a few converging pieces of evidence your brain already trusts. That changes how you prepare the night. Not by wrestling thoughts, but by stacking small proofs. And now, the quiet cliffhanger. There's one slider you carry everywhere, a lever that speaks to all the others with every cycle, and it's been under your nose the whole time. Before we reach for that lever, pause on the idea of predictability. Your biology loves patterns because patterns lower the need to predict. Choose a short sequence you can repeat most evenings without effort, placing your phone a little farther away, dimming a light, warming your hands, naming the day with one line. Repetition teaches the blue broadcaster that surprises are unlikely here. It dials down by itself. The benefit isn't dramatic fireworks, but a steady undercurrent of ease. and that steadiness sets the stage for a rhythm that can escort your heart, your alarm center, and your attention into the same room. Notice how warmth and gentle weight interact with breath. When your hands are warm, small vessels at the surface open, and the body becomes a little better at letting heat move outward. With a light blanket, your muscles don't need to brace against the air. They can release micro-tensions that you rarely feel but always carry. Those changes make slow breathing easier because the chest meets less resistance from guarded muscles. In turn, slower breathing sends stretch signals back toward the brainstem, which replies by easing that wakeful drizzle further. It's a loop of proof, not a loop of effort. Social ease plugs into this loop as well. A friendly tone nudges facial muscles into softer configurations. Those muscles send their own feedback, whispering to deeper circuits that the environment is safe. Your heart follows by lengthening the restful intervals between beats. Your breath follows by smoothing its curve. The alarm evaluator receives fewer urgent packets and more all-clear messages. None of this asks you to perform. It invites you to curate inputs you already have access to: warmth, weight, tone, and a few honest words. And what of labeling your state? The act of naming shifts focus from threat to description. Description is metabolically cheaper than defense. When you say this is the residue of a long day, the brain no longer needs to scan for causes with the intensity of a detective. It can release the case file to a lower priority drawer. The benefit here is not poetic, it's mechanical. Fewer resources spent on scanning means more resources available for restoration. Your biology is frugal and wise. Give it a label, and it gives you back some energy. All of this converges on one practical suggestion: build a tiny safety stack you can deploy almost automatically. Dim a light, warm the hands, add a light blanket, choose a gentle voice, and name the day in a sentence. This is not superstition, it's a way of offering converging, trustworthy data to the systems that decide whether to guard or to idle. Over time, the stack becomes shorthand. Your internal networks recognize the pattern and relax more quickly. And now, as promised, the lever you carry with you everywhere, your breath. Its pace, its depth, and its pauses reach those same brainstem and heart circuits with each cycle, shaping the background chemistry that guides attention. Tilt the breath, and much else tilts with it. In the next section, you'll see how a few small adjustments send measurable calm upward. No strain, no chasing, just rhythm doing what rhythm does best. We'll start with the lever that rides with you everywhere, your breath. When you lengthen the out-breath just a little more than the in-breath, the body reads it as a safety message. The heart listens first. On an easy inhale, it quickens slightly, preparing, and on a slower exhale, it eases back, recovering. That gentle back and forth teaches the heart to be flexible, and a flexible heart whispers calm to the rest of the system. Deep inside the brainstem, the same areas that send wakeful chemistry pay attention to this rhythm and soften their broadcast. You aren't pushing thoughts away, you are changing the background music they move to. From that first tilt comes a second, when the diaphragm does most of the work, low, steady, unforced. The chest walls stop bracing, and the neck stops helping. The nerves that coordinate this movement send clear, regular messages upward, and your inner gauges of body state become less noisy. This clarity matters because many alarms in the mind are triggered by confusion in the body's reports. With the belly quietly leading, the brain receives cleaner signals and needs fewer emergency checks. You feel this as a small but important shift. Attention stops jumping and begins to hover. And once hovering is possible, a deeper coupling unfolds between two rhythms that love each other when given the chance. Your heartbeat and your breath like to dance. As the breath arrives, the heart steps forward. As the breath leaves, the heart steps back. This synchrony is not a trick, it is a conservation plan. When the steps coordinate, the system spends less energy on micromanagement. The result is a steadier mood and easier focus, because the parts of the brain that monitor body state can stop sounding minor alerts and let you drift. This is one reason a slow, stable pattern is especially soothing in the late evening. It reduces the number of messages that ask for your attention. Fewer messages mean fewer decisions, and fewer decisions open a door to something breath touches that is often overlooked, the chemistry of air itself. A quiet secret of calm is comfort with carbon dioxide. When you rush your breathing, you sweep too much of it away, and sensitive senses react as if danger is near. By letting the exhale linger and the inhale arrive without urgency, you allow levels to settle in a range that those senses read as normal. The change is small yet meaningful. the body stops sending "fix this now" signals, and the mind is spared a cascade of unnecessary questions. Every so often, you may notice a spontaneous, slightly deeper breath that feels like a reset. That soft sigh is the system's way of smoothing irregularities, not a sign of distress. Treat it as a maintenance breath. Then return to the gentle pattern, unforced in, slightly longer out, and let chemistry do some of the calming for you. There's another door the breath opens, and it sits just behind your nose. When you breathe through your nose, air moves past sensors that time each cycle and send precise pulses into networks involved in attention and emotion. Those pulses ripple toward the parts of your mind that weigh meaning and decide where to look next. The result is a subtle sharpening that paradoxically makes it easier to soften. Clarity at the edges allows you to stand down in the center. Mouth breathing can still keep you alive, of course, but the nasal route adds a rhythm that organizes. It's like tapping a conductor's baton, so the orchestra of signals can follow the same bar lines. And once a rhythm is established, you can explore patterns without strain. A simple pattern many people find helpful is to let the inhale rise like a quiet wave and the exhale stretch like a longer shoreline. Count if you wish or don't. What matters is the proportion, not the numbers. Shorter in, longer out, with a brief, natural pause at the end of the exhale where the body chooses stillness for a heartbeat or two. That pause is not holding your breath, it is letting the breath rest. In that rest, the brain reads nothing urgent and unwinds its grip on scattered thoughts. You're offering proof, cycle after cycle, that the next air will arrive without a fight. Proof changes physiology more reliably than force. As your breath steadies, attention often becomes more aware of the inside of the chest, belly, and throat. This quiet sensing of internal life is not self-absorption, it is literacy. The more familiar you are with gentle signals, the less likely you are to misinterpret them as problems. Predictive systems in the brain rely on patterns. Give them a reliable pattern, and they stop sending error messages. In daily life, this means fewer sudden jolts of worry from small shifts in heartbeat or temperature. At night, it means the mind can release the search for what's wrong and settle into what is. That shift saves fuel. Saved fuel becomes calm. You might wonder how breath, a simple mechanical act, reaches the circuits that handle alarm and meaning. Part of the answer is the path through the diaphragm and heart we've traced. Another part is the way inhalation and exhalation nudge different branches of your autonomic system. The in-breath leans slightly toward readiness, the out-breath leans slightly toward restoration. By extending the latter, you lengthen the time your body practices the skill of relaxing. Skills grow with reps. Each unhurried exhale is a repetition that makes the next one easier. Over an evening, the cumulative effect is a quieter baseline. Over many evenings, it becomes a trait. You become someone whose system can find neutral more quickly. Breath also coordinates with sound. A gentle, unvarying backdrop, something soft and textured rather than sharp, can act as a scaffold for your rhythm. When the environment provides a stable pattern, the breath often conforms, the heart follows, and the brain's chatter networks ease their pace. This pairing is helpful if your thoughts tend to accelerate when the room gets too quiet. You are not masking your mind, you are aligning several metronomes so they stop competing. Alignment is kinder than suppression. If you prefer something even simpler, try linking breath to a small, consistent gesture you already do at night, turning off a lamp, folding a blanket, placing a glass nearby. Let the gesture cue a slightly longer exhale every time. Habits tied to existing anchors are the ones that last. Lasting beats dramatic. There are gentler safeguards too. If the breath ever begins to feel tight, invite it to become smaller rather than larger. Paradoxically, aiming for less can restore ease faster than trying to take a big relaxing breath. Tiny quiet breaths kept low, through the nose, with a longer out. Often this is all it takes to reassure the system that it doesn't need to intervene. The goal is comfort, not performance. All these paths point to one simple conclusion. Breath choices are messages. You don't have to think your way into calm if you can breathe your way into evidence. Evidence is accepted by the parts of you that never attended a lecture, but decide how you feel anyway. Let them read the pattern, and they'll change the setting. As this rhythm becomes familiar, a new question opens. What happens to the background narrative of the mind, the stream that reflects, compares, revisits, when the breath has convinced the body that it's safe to idle? The answer is encouraging. The networks that entertain inner talk can dim without vanishing, like a city at night that keeps a few windows glowing. In the next section, you'll see how that gentle dimming frees attention from self-noise and make space for quiet repair. We left off with breath coaxing the body into ease. Now watch what happens to the background narrator of the mind. As evening unfolds, the network that lights up when you drift into self-talk and daydreams, your quiet commentator tends to soften its grip. The center behind that commentary, which links midline regions at the front and the back of your head, doesn't disappear. It simply yields some of the stage, with less fuel from wakeful chemistry and more rhythm coming from slow breaths and slower heartbeats. The chatter loses urgency. You can still remember, imagine, plan, but the edges blur just enough to stop catching on every thought. The benefit is subtle and important. When the narrator stops pressing, experience stops feeling like a report due at midnight. Here's a friendly surprise. The softening of this commentary is helped by shifts in the brain's internal newsroom. The evening brings a different editorial balance, less headline chasing from alertness chemicals, more long-form editing from slower rhythms. Key hubs that usually coordinate self-referential thinking take a step back, while regions that integrate sights, sounds, and bodily signals take a steadier lead. The mind becomes less of a monologue and more of a landscape. You notice this when a memory shows up without a demand to analyze it, or when a plan appears without an order to rehearse it 10 times. Analysis is still possible. It simply stops insisting on center stage, and the moment insistence fades, another gain becomes available. Energy that was spent debating yourself can be spent repairing yourself. Another gentle truth follows. When the background network dims, it becomes easier for memory systems to do their quiet archiving. Think of your day's experiences as pages on a desk. During heavy self-talk, you keep picking up the pages, scribbling in the margins, flipping them back and forth. When the commentary relaxes, the pages can be sorted: what to keep, what to generalize, what to let go. Patterns strengthen while clutter loosens its grip. You don't have to force forgetting, you only need to stop restamping every moment with fresh emotion. The dimming of inner narration creates that window. Fewer interruptions let the filing happen. The result is not dramatic in the moment, it is cumulative clarity later. You might wonder whether less inner talk means less you. The answer sits in an elegant distinction. The feeling of self is not the same as the act of commenting on yourself. At night, the part that observes and narrates eases up, while the quieter sense of being, sensation, breath, posture, presence becomes more apparent. This shift often reduces rumination, because the brain stops trying to solve the self like a problem. It treats the self more like a place to occupy gently. The paradox is lovely. You feel more like yourself when you stop talking about yourself so much. With fewer internal announcements, the room becomes still enough to hear what actually matters. There's a timing element here that coordinates with light and temperature. As evening light fades and body warmth drifts downward, a hormone that marks night rises in the background. It doesn't sedate you, it whispers timing to clocks across the body and brain. Those clocks, in turn, adjust how networks communicate. The commentator network reduces its crosstalk with high alert circuits and syncs more with slower, large-scale waves that favor rest. You don't notice the handshake directly, you notice its consequences: less itch to check a device, less compulsion to revisit a conversation, more willingness to let a thought end where it naturally ends. When time inside feels less rushed, inner speech behaves like a guest with good manners. It leaves before the party is over. There's a structural piece to this too. The regions that typically anchor self-focused thought are metabolically hungry. They require resources to maintain the looping, re-rehearsing style of cognition that rumination loves. When the body starts prioritizing restoration, digestive work, tissue repair, immune housekeeping, the budget shifts. Systems triage. Loops that don't serve immediate survival or maintenance lose funding. The result appears as merciful quiet. You didn't win an argument with your thoughts, your biology reassigned the staff. Knowing this matters, because it means calm is not a referendum on your willpower. It's an allocation decision, made by a wise accountant you don't see. Let's fold in an everyday application. If you've ever noticed that journaling late feels different than journaling at noon, this is why. At night, shorter sentences often suffice. The narrator isn't trying to litigate every detail, it's trying to release the charge stored in them. A single line, "I did enough today," can carry the same weight that a page needed earlier. You're not being lazy, you're working with the network dynamics of the hour. Helpful too is to choose forms that encourage closure, bullet points that end, lists with a last item that says tomorrow. The mind hears the period and accepts it. Another small but potent link. When inner commentary dims, sensory input competes less with imagination. Images get room to breathe. This is why gentle, non-demanding audio or a plain mental picture can settle the mind. You don't need plot, you need texture, something simple enough to hold attention without dragging it. The background network appreciates a scene it doesn't need to explain. A coastline, a quiet street after rain, a page turning. The less you ask that network to justify, the more it lets go. Now the cliffhanger hiding in plain sight. For the background narrator to quiet down, external noise often has to be sorted at the gate. Even a calm mind will resist if the senses keep throwing pebbles at the window. The system in charge of that gate lives deep inside, deciding which sights, sounds, and touches deserve a knock, and which can wait. When the gate chooses well, the commentator can rest. When the gate is too open, you get yanked back into commentary to interpret every new ping. This brings us to the elegant mechanism that sets the traffic rules for sensation. Before we walk to the gate, notice how these pieces reinforce each other. Breath steadies heart. Heart and breath calm the newsroom. The newsroom reduces commentary. Reduced commentary frees repair. Freed repair makes you less reactive to stray thoughts. A virtuous loop born from simple choices. The beauty of loops is that you can enter at any point. If breath feels hard, begin with reducing notifications. If reducing notifications feels hard, begin with dimmer light. If light is fixed, begin with a single sentence that ends your day. Each doorway leads to the same room. If you enjoy a practical experiment, try this. Spend 1 minute letting your out-breath lengthen, then 1 minute naming the day in 3 brief lines, then 1 minute switching off a single source of input, a screen, a lamp, a sound. Observe how the inner narrator reacts. Most people find that by the 3rd minute, sentences in the head end more quickly, like waves that decide not to crash. The brain learns from the sequence that not everything requires a comment, and because the mind is a pattern seeker, it repeats what works with less and less prompting. We've been speaking as if commentary were a single thing. In truth, it's a coalition. Memory, imagination, evaluation, planning. Evening doesn't silence the coalition, it reshuffles its priorities. Memory offers context without insistence. Imagination wanders without recruiting anxiety. Evaluation softens into perspective. Planning reduces to a sketch. You haven't lost your edge. You've sheathed it for the night. In that sheath, the blade stays sharp. All of this relies, more than most people realize, on how much raw data makes it through the sensory door. Too much unfiltered input revs the newsroom and wakes the commentator. The body knows this, which is why you blink more slowly as you tire, and why sounds seem farther away when you're deeply at ease. A certain relay station orchestrates this filtering, especially as you move toward deeper rest. It can dim, delay, or deprioritize signals, giving the cortex fewer reasons to interrupt itself. So the natural next question is simple. Who runs the door, and how does it learn to say not now without missing what matters? To answer, we'll step through that relay and watch it tune the volume of the senses, sight, sound, touch, so the mind's narrator can keep its newfound quiet. You asked who runs the door. The answer is a quiet hub near the center of your head that most signals pass through before they become experiences. Think of it as a concierge with many stations, one for vision, one for hearing, one for touch, coordinating traffic between the senses and the cortex. When the evening tilts toward calm, this hub shifts from ushering every visitor to slowing the line. It doesn't lock the doors, it adds a velvet rope, a respectful pause, a one at a time. That pause is everything. It gives your narrator fewer interruptions, which is why you can let a thought finish without being pulled sideways by a stray sound or flicker of light. Here's the first gentle piece of the mechanism. As you move toward deeper rest, the relay cells in that hub change their style of messaging. During busy, alert hours, they send quick, faithful copies of the world upstream. Later, they slip into a bursty, rhythm-driven mode that favors internal timing over external updates. This shift happens because of tiny channels in the cell's membranes that open and close in patterns like a telegraph that slows to a regular beat at night. The beat doesn't silence the line. It sets a tempo that says, we'll check less often. With fewer checks, the cortex stops expecting constant novelty and winds down its scanning. From there, the second piece unfolds. An elegant paper-thin sheet of inhibitory neurons wrapped around the hub acts like a dimmer ring. It listens to chatter from the cortex and the senses, then sends well-timed hushes back into the relay. Each hush is a brief curtain that reduces the chance of a small input crashing onto center stage. These timed hushes can group into short bursts, tiny spindles of protection that make it harder for disturbances to break through. You experience them as resilience to little noises, a distant door, a faint car, a shifting blanket. The signal might reach your ear, but the concierge at the gate decides most can wait. A third thread ties attention to the gate. When your front of the brain systems choose a target, this sentence, that melody, specific wings of the hub, amplify matching channels and damp the rest. A back of the brain station devoted to visual coordination helps here, raising or lowering spotlight intensity across the scene. In bright, demanding hours, this attention gate partnership lets you track a conversation in a cafe. At night, the same partnership, now tuned for rest, lowers the overall gain, less spotlight, more ambient. The result is gentler meaning-making, impressions instead of investigations. You're not missing life, you're letting life pass at a humane speed. Now the fourth piece, habit and predictability. The gate learns from repetition. When the same sound occurs again and again without consequence, the relay becomes less eager to wake the newsroom about it. This habituation is thrift, not neglect. Your biology remembers that the heater hum means warmth coming, and that a refrigerator click means nothing to do. Evening routines leverage this thrift. Dim the lights at the same time, use the same lamp, place objects with the same sound, and the hub treats those cues as background decor. Because it trusts the pattern, it flags less for review. Fewer flags, fewer internal memos, more ease. A fifth piece is timing from within. Slow waves, broad rolling rhythms that sweep through the cortex, reach back toward the hub to coordinate the gate's hushes. When a slow crest passes, the relay takes that as a collective "let's quiet down," and the timing protects the brain from random pings lining up at once. Picture a tide gently pulling a harbor's boats in the same direction. Fewer collisions, fewer alarms. You don't feel the physics, but you feel the outcome. Thoughts stop clattering into each other, and the mind finally has room to settle into one thing or nothing at all. Here's a practical doorway into all of this. Reduce sharp edges at the input before you ask the hub to filter them. Soft light rather than point sources. Fabrics that don't scratch. A temperature that doesn't demand constant micro-corrections. Each external adjustment lowers the burden on the gate. Your biology can manage pebbles, it struggles with gravel. When the world presents fewer sharp changes, the concierge can be generous and still keep the lobby quiet. This small kindness to your senses becomes a large kindness to your thoughts. Another application, choose sound that behaves. Continuous gentle textures with little variance invite the gate to treat them as landscape rather than headlines. The relay stops asking the cortex to explain, and the commentator can rest. When a sudden noise does arrive, the dimmer ring often catches it, letting only a softened version through. You may notice it but not be recruited by it. That difference, noticed versus recruited, is the distance between a momentary ripple and a full wakefulness. It helps to remember that the gate isn't a single door but many specialized entrances. The visual wing handles light levels and motion. An auditory wing manages frequency and onset. The tactile wing tracks pressure and temperature. Because they're separate, you can lighten the load selectively. If light is fixed, soften sound. If sound is fixed, soften touch with a blanket that holds without pressing. Each softened channel teaches the hub that the environment is stable. Stability breeds generosity. More not now, fewer urgent. There's also a social angle you can use. Gentle human signals, slow cadence, warm tone, relaxed facial muscles, arrive through sight and sound with a particular pattern. The gate learns that this pattern usually precedes safety. When it appears, the relay cooperates by letting less competing input through. This is one reason a calm voice can make a room feel quieter, even if the decibel level doesn't change. Your system is weighting the voice as context, and context changes thresholds. You're not being suggestible, you're being efficient. At a deeper level, the hub negotiates with wakeful chemistry. When alerting messengers are high, the gate adopts a better safe than sorry policy. As evening lowers those messengers and breath steadies heart rhythm, the policy flips to let's conserve. You can help this flip by avoiding late spikes, bright blue-white light, stimulating headlines, abrupt temperature swings. The gate reads those spikes as reasons to reopen the lobby. Without them, it keeps the rope up and the line orderly. Consider a small experiment to feel this working. For 5 minutes, reduce visual contrast, one warm lamp, no screens. For the next 5, sit with a continuous soft sound. For the next 5, add a light weight across your torso. Observe how external details slide from things to pass to things to ignore. That slide isn't indifference, it's skilled filtering. Your thalamic concierge has decided the guests can wait until morning. A philosophical angle offers comfort here. The world remains rich even when you experience less of it at once. Filtering is not an insult to reality, it's a courtesy to your finite attention. At night, that courtesy protects the projects you care about by letting the machinery that maintains you actually do its work. You support the future by narrowing the present. Of course, the gate should never miss what matters. That's the beauty of its design. It raises thresholds, not drawbridges. A truly relevant signal, a smoke alarm, a name spoken sharply, still earns a pass. Trust this, it allows you to relax without fear, that calm equals carelessness. The hub is a professional, let it do its job. As this filtering becomes reliable, another process begins to shine through the quiet, the slow build-up of a biochemical pressure that tilts wakefulness downward. You've felt it by its effects all day, a gentle weight gathering behind your eyes, and you'll appreciate what it does as the night deepens. In the next section, you'll meet the molecule that keeps that honest ledger and learn how it nudges the system toward deeper ease without forcing anything at all. All day long, your brain keeps an honest ledger. With every thought you chew on, every problem you lift, tiny packets of cellular fuel are spent, and a quiet receipt is left behind. That receipt is a small messenger called adenosine. It doesn't scold, it counts. Hour by hour, it collects in key places that decide how alert you feel, gently increasing the weight on the scale that tips you from lively into ready to rest. You know the sensation without the word, the soft heaviness behind the eyes, the subtle loss of sparkle in attention, the way effort starts to feel like pushing through warm water. This is not failure, it's accounting. The system is telling the truth about what was used, and truth is calming when you let it be. There's a helpful way to think about this. 2 hands guide your wakefulness. One hand watches the clock and cares about timing. The other tracks effort and cares about what you've spent. Adenosine is the second hand. It rises not because the sun sets, but because you lived. When you've worked with intensity or stayed awake longer, the tally rises faster. When the day was gentler, it rises more slowly. By evening, if you've honored your limits, there's enough of this messenger to signal you've done enough, and the arousal systems answer by softening. The locus that sprinkles wakeful chemistry stops pushing as hard. The chatter network you met earlier loses its insistence. The pressure you feel is not coercion, it's mercy, biology's nudge to move you from output to upkeep. You might wonder how a simple molecule speaks so clearly to complex circuits. Adenosine binds to small listening posts, receptors on cells that broadcast alertness and attention. When it occupies those posts, it lowers the chance those cells will evade the system. In a wake-promoting region at the base of the front brain, adenosine acts like a hand on the shoulder of a friend who's been on all day, saying enough for now. The change isn't a dramatic shutdown, it's a lowering of the gain on the amplifier. Thinking becomes possible without unnecessary loudness. You can still read, still talk, still laugh, but you're less likely to chase every tangent. The world feels closer to its right size. Here's a connection you've likely felt. Caffeine works by borrowing those listening posts. It sits in the adenosine seats without delivering the message. With the seats occupied, the "you've done enough" signal can't land, and wakeful circuits keep humming. In the short term, that can be useful. You get a little more runway to finish the task, but the ledger doesn't vanish because the seats were borrowed. When the effect fades, the true count presents itself, and sometimes the contrast feels sharper because it has been waiting. Used early and lightly, the borrowing can be harmless. Used late and heavily, it confuses the conversation just when your biology wants clarity. This is why many people find that an afternoon cup nudges their night a few degrees off-center. It wasn't punishment, it was mixed messages. There's also a reason your second wind feels different from your first. If you push far past your usual window, other alerting systems step in to compensate. Stress chemistry rises, temperature stays higher, the gate you met earlier keeps letting input through. You can ride that wave, but the adenosine ledger is still there, and the bill will land. Knowing this changes the tone of how you treat late nights. Instead of making them a test of character, you can treat them as loans. Loans are fine, just not every day, and not at rates that make tomorrow poorer. Consider the role of light movement and pausing during the day. Gentle activity, walks, stretches, unhurried chores, helps distribute fuel use more evenly and smooths the rate at which adenosine accrues. Short rests do something complementary. They don't erase the ledger, but they allow attention systems to stop overfiring, so the perception of pressure eases. A brief nap, if it stays modest, can lower the immediate sense of heaviness by paying off a small slice of the debt. If it runs long and late, the timing hand of the system may get confused, and the two hands, timing and effort, stop agreeing. What counts as modest varies by person. The principle stays the same: small payments feel good and keep the account honest. There's a human angle that brings relief. Variation in the ledger is normal. Some people have more sensitive listening posts for adenosine. They feel the enough signal sooner and more strongly. Others have posts that are less responsive. They run later with less drag. Neither profile is a virtue or a flaw, it's a trait. If you've judged yourself for being the one who fades early, let the judgment go. Your system may simply be set to protect you with clearer signals. If you're the one who can go late, respect that your ledger still exists. The bill just shows up with a softer knock. Evening habits can support this chemistry in quiet, practical ways. Avoiding late spikes in stimulation, bright, cold light, intense media, sudden cold or heat, protects the developing conversation between enough and not yet. So does shifting to lower effort tasks as the night deepens, folding instead of scrolling, reading instead of chasing comment threads. You're not aiming to become inert. You're aligning your actions with the signal that has already risen. Alignment feels like self-respect more than self-denial. It says, "I hear you, body, we can land." An encouraging detail: as you enter deeper phases of night, adenosine levels naturally recede. Enzymes clear it, transporters shuttle it, the system resets. This is part of why you can wake with a clean slate even after a demanding day. The pressure that felt so persuasive in the evening is designed to be reversible. The kindness here is architectural. You are built to recover if you let the machinery work. Knowing that makes it easier to trust the urge to power down. You're not losing time, you're reclaiming capacity. From a reflective angle, adenosine offers a philosophy of effort. It doesn't judge how important your day was, it counts how much of you it used. That's a better kind of fairness than the mind's stories about productivity. When you feel that gentle weight arrive, you can treat it as praise for participation rather than proof of weakness. You met the day, now the day is meeting you back with a hand on the brake. There's tenderness in accepting that hand. If you wish to experiment, think of a late afternoon boundary as a gift to the ledger. Choose a time after which you let stimulating inputs taper, caffeine pause, and effort shift from sprint to glide. Pair it with a simple sentence that names the transition: I'm moving from output to upkeep. The words won't change the molecules, they'll change your relationship to them. Most tension reduces when we stop arguing with physics. All of this points to a quiet cliffhanger. If adenosine is the honest receipt of a day's work, something must carry out the cleanup after the receipt has done its job. The brain doesn't have the usual drainage that other organs rely on, so it uses a different, beautifully designed rinse. As the night deepens and the ledger is paid, channels open, fluids move, and yesterday's byproducts are escorted out like guests leaving a well-run hall. In the next section, you'll watch that housekeeping unfold, slow, rhythmic, and reassuringly tidy. If adenosine is the honest receipt of a day's work, then the brain's cleanup crew is a network of tiny rivers that open wider as night deepens. Your brain lacks the standard drainage pipes used elsewhere in the body, so it relies on a clever workaround. Clear fluid from the surface slips down along blood vessels, flows through the tissue, collects waste, and rides back out along veins toward channels that lead away from the skull. This rinse is helped by star-shaped support cells that line the tiny lanes. They arrange water channels in such a way that fluid can move more freely when the system is ready to clean. You don't feel any of this directly, but you benefit the next day when thinking feels lighter and effort feels less sticky. The shift into cleaning mode is not random, it's coordinated with the signals of safety and rest you've already begun to cultivate. When wakeful chemistry eases, those star-shaped cells relax their grip, and space between brain cells quietly expands. The increased space allows fluid to circulate more easily, like opening aisles in a crowded room so staff can pass with trays. At the same time, the gentle pulsing of arteries provides the push that drives fluid inward, while the ebb of veins provides the pull that carries it away. Even your breath lends a hand. Slow nasal breathing changes pressures in a way that nudges fluid along these perivascular paths. None of this requires effort from you. It unfolds when the system believes the night is safe and unhurried. What exactly is being carried out? A mix of leftovers from metabolism, fragments of proteins, excess messengers, spent fuel byproducts. The list includes familiar troublemakers whose build-up can cloud thinking and mood when they aren't cleared efficiently. During the day, these byproducts accumulate as the cost of staying responsive and engaged. At night, the rinse escorts them toward the margins, where vessels and newly appreciated drainage channels in the coverings of the brain help guide them out to deeper pathways in the neck. It's a relay, not a single pipe. Surface channels, vessel-adjacent lanes, tissue spaces and exit routes coordinate like a team passing batons. When the baton handoffs are smooth, the head wakes clearer, the day feels less heavy, and even simple tasks regain a crisp edge. Here's a practical corollary that reassures rather than warns. You don't have to hack the rinse. You just have to avoid blocking it. Heavy late drinking, abrupt temperature swings, or a flood of late bright light can confuse the signals that tell the support cells to open the aisles. Likewise, forcing the system with late intense effort keeps wakeful chemistry high and reduces the expansion of space between cells. None of this is about moral lessons. It's logistics. If you give the cleaners the hallway and the time, they do their job. Small, boring choices, tapering stimulation, keeping the room steady, letting the breath lengthen, turn into tidy bookshelves in the morning. Position matters a little too, and in a way that feels intuitive. When you lie on your side, gravity helps distribute fluid evenly across the lanes. On your back, some people still rinse well, while others notice more congestion. On your stomach, many find breathing and flow less comfortable. You don't need to memorize rules. Your body will usually negotiate the position that feels easiest to maintain, with an open neck and quiet jaw. That ease is part of the signal set. A relaxed face and steady breath say carry on to the nightly crew. If you change positions, the system adjusts. The lanes are flexible. They've evolved to keep house under many conditions. There's a daytime prelude to this night shift worth mentioning. Regular movement, walks, stretches, light activity improves the health of the vessels that drive the rinse. Those vessels are the paddles that stir the fluid. Better paddles mean more even flow. Hydration helps, not through late chugging, but through steady, reasonable intake earlier. The goal is not to flush anything by force. It's to avoid dryness that makes the lanes sluggish. Short, restorative pauses in the day also matter. They don't perform the rinse, but they reduce the pace at which byproducts pile up into the evening. Think of them as keeping the desk neater, so the night crew has less to sort. A philosophical lens softens the whole topic. Cleaning is not punishment for being alive, it is the privilege of being alive. The mind's best work throws off shavings, the night's best work sweeps them. When you allow the broader rhythms to carry you, lighter input, longer outbreath, kinder timing, you're not doing nothing. You're making room for the part of intelligence that maintains intelligence. There is dignity in that permission. It says, I value tomorrow enough to give tonight the space it needs. Another subtle thread ties to emotion. Big, unprocessed feelings leave their own residues, chemical signatures and tightly linked neural associations that keep demanding your narrator's attention. When the rinse flows and the background commentary has softened, those residues are more likely to be decoupled from constant rehearsal. You can think of it as loosening a knot, not by pulling harder on the rope, but by giving it slack so the fibers stop biting. You wake to find that a feeling is still there, but less fused to its story. That difference is quiet but profound. It makes room for perspective without erasing truth. Consider a small evening experiment that respects this housekeeping. In the last hour before bed, choose 3 gentle supports for flow, a single warm light instead of layered brightness, breathing through the nose with a longer exhale, and a consistent, unremarkable soundtrack that doesn't ask to be analyzed. These are not performance tasks, they're cues that tell the star-shaped cells and vessel rhythms, the aisles are open. If you like, add one sentence that closes your ledger for the day, I did enough for a Tuesday, so the alert systems stop contesting the night's authority. The result you're looking for isn't drama, it's the absence of friction when you wake. You might ask how the rinse knows when to stop. The answer threads through timing signals you've already met. As the night cycles, deeper phases favor more expansive flow, lighter phases re-establish contact with the outer world. Toward morning, alerting chemistry rises again, vessel pulsations shift, and the aisles narrow to daytime widths. You don't flip a switch from clean to dirty, you slide along a curve. Slides are forgiving. If one night is imperfect, tomorrow is another arc. The system is designed for resilience, not perfection. There's one more kindness hidden in the architecture. The exit routes from the skull, connect to broader immune pathways. That means the rinse is not only about removing residues, it's about brief nightly conversations between the brain and the body's guardians. The conversation says, here's what we used, here's what we found, here's what we'll need. Your well-being tomorrow is shaped by that quiet briefing. When you protect the briefing with gentler nights, you're voting for clearer mornings. All of this sets up the next question naturally. What sets the tempo for the rinse? What tells the aisles when to widen and the concierge when to hush? The answer is rhythm at a grand scale, rolling across your cortex like a tide. Those slow, synchronized waves both protect the quiet and propel the cleaning. In the next section, you'll watch those waves rise and fall, see how they shelter thought from needless interruption, and learn how simple choices earlier in the evening make them stronger, steadier, and more generous with their gifts. The rinse you just met relies on a conductor that moves more slowly than anything you notice while awake. Imagine a tide that rolls through neighborhoods of your cortex, crest after crest, cueing windows to dim and doors to close in a coordinated sequence. Each crest is a brief shared quiet among large groups of neurons. Each valley is a momentary readiness to receive the next necessary message. Together, these rises and falls organize the night, guarding silence and guiding housekeeping. You don't do these waves, you allow conditions that help them appear, steady timing, softer inputs, breath that lengthens on the way out, and an honest ledger that says enough for today. One reason these waves matter is their precision. During the day, different parts of your brain fire in complex, overlapping patterns, a jazz session of perception, memory, and decision. At night, when the tide strengthens, vast patches switch into an alternating pattern, down together, then up together, then down. The down together phase gives cells a tiny rest from constant chatter. The up together phase lets them pass brief packets of information that help the rinse and the filing proceed. This alternation protects you from random noise. It's hard for a stray ping to recruit the whole orchestra when the conductor is setting a slow, unified beat. You'll feel the gift of that beat in small ways the next day. Tasks that require steady attention, reading a page without backtracking, listening through a full paragraph, following a conversation without mentally rewriting it, draw on networks that benefit from synchronized rest. The tide doesn't make you perfect, it preserves your capacity to stay with a thing. In a distracted world, that's a rare kindness. When the slow waves are generous, you wake to find that your focus is not something you have to clench, it's something you can lean on. The slow tide also stabilizes the gate you met earlier. Each crest sends a subtle hush toward the relay at the center of your head, reinforcing its polite velvet rope. As the crest passes, little protective bursts, spindles, ride along, adding extra padding against interruptions. The partnership is elegant, the tide sets tempo, the spindles add texture, and the gate obeys both. This is why a room that's not perfectly quiet can still feel protective once you've settled. Internal rhythms have taken responsibility for smoothing the world's edges. There's a logistics layer here too. The waves help with routing. When they sweep forward and back, they time when information should move from temporary storage sites to more stable repositories. Memories formed during the day, names, routes, snippets of skill, are not simply replayed. They're edited for gist, trimmed of redundancy, and linked to what you already know. The tide creates windows where this replay and rewrite can happen without interference from fresh input. You don't feel the edits, but you benefit when a detail that was slippery yesterday suddenly fits. What strengthens this tide? Predictable timing gives it footing. When night arrives around the same hour most days, many clocks in your body align to support the wave's rise. Temperature shifts downward, alerting chemistry stands down, and that night-marking hormone you've heard whispering in the background settles across tissues like a dimmer. Add to this the breath pattern you've practiced, shorter in, longer out, and the heart's rhythm follows, feeding back a steady signal that favors the slow beat. It's not one act, it's a coalition. Coalitions are robust because no single piece must be perfect for the whole to work. Your choices earlier in the evening shape the height of the tide. Intense light late tells inner clocks that day still claims you, the tide hesitates. Heavy discussions or sharp media keep the newsroom loud, the tide stays offshore. By contrast, a tapered sequence, one lamp instead of many, one simple task instead of 10, one calm voice instead of a feed, tells the sea it's safe to roll in. On many nights, a small change is enough to tip the balance. The principle to trust is proportion, fewer spikes, more slopes. A comforting detail, the brain builds slow waves locally too. Regions that worked hardest during the day often show bigger crests at night, as if a neighborhood put up extra quiet street signs. This local rest is self-allocating and fair. If your eyes did hours of tight focus, visual areas may earn more tide. If your planning centers wrestled with choices, they'll receive their share. You don't have to manage the distribution, you just have to stop adding work once the distribution starts. From a philosophical angle, slow waves teach a gentler lesson about progress. There's growth when things push, but there's also growth when things synchronize. The culture around you often celebrates the former. Your biology insists on both. The nightly tide is cooperation in motion, cells agreeing to be quiet together so they can be useful together later. There's something humbling and reassuring in that. The most restorative moments are not solo heroics, they are shared pauses. If you like experiments, consider this simple one across a week. Pick a consistent dim point each night, say when the first warm lamp goes on, and pair it with 2 actions, a longer exhale pattern for 2 minutes, and the removal of one surprising input, a notification source, a strong light, a scrolling habit. Notice not just how you fall into night, but how your attention feels at mid-morning the next day, steady or jittery, sticky or smooth. What you're feeling then is partly the strength of last night's tide. The feedback loop is delayed, but faithful. Hydration and temperature play supporting roles. Mild cooling of the room helps the tides rise. Your core temperature wants to drift downward as the waves grow. Warm hands or feet can aid this by letting heat escape more easily, which is why a light layer on the torso with slightly warmer extremities often feels strangely perfect. You're helping the gradient that the tide uses to time itself. Again, no heroics, just respect for gradients. When slow waves run well, they even choreograph those star-shaped support cells you met in the rinse. During the down together phase, cells reduce their activity, easing the way for fluid to move. During up together, brief signals coordinate transport. The rinse and the tide, then, aren't separate stories. They're 2 views of one conversation. Clean, repair, prepare. Accept the rhythm, and you let all 3 unfold. People sometimes worry that if the tide is strong, they'll be unreachable. The design is kinder than that. Thresholds rise, not walls. A truly relevant signal still makes it through. Trusting this prevents the anxious monitoring that keeps the newsroom noisy. Monitoring is costly, confidence is cheap. Teach your system with patterns that the door stays ajar for what matters, and it will stop hovering at the threshold. And yet there is a complement to the tide, another nightly mode with a different music. If slow waves are the steady breathing of the brain's deep body, the other mode is its theater, colorful, emotionally charged, and oddly liberating. During this time, muscle tone loosens, the eyes flick beneath closed lids, and networks that handle feeling light up while the usual gatekeepers step aside. The stage is not for logic drills, it's for emotional editing, creative recombination, and perspective without debate. That mode is approaching as the night cycles, and it does something slow waves can't. It lets you metabolize the sharp edges of the day without using words. In the next section, you'll step onto that quiet stage and watch how dreams refine feeling, keep social wounds from staying raw, and return you to morning with edges rounded just enough to meet the world kindly again. You've arrived at the brain's quiet theater. The house lights dim, the curtains loosen, and a different crew takes the stage. Muscles release into near stillness, an elegant safeguard so the body won't act out the story being told, while your eyes flick beneath closed lids as if tracking a scene across the horizon. Inside, networks that feel and imagine glow a little warmer, networks that argue and edit step back a pace. The result is experience without agenda, pictures threaded with feeling, situations that melt and reform, a rehearsal that isn't about performance. You don't have to direct any of it, the show knows its script. Here's the first gentle mechanism worth knowing. During this theater time, the chemistry that shouts "be ready" all day goes almost silent. The brain's sprinklers of vigilance, those that keep you scanning, reduce their output to a whisper. With that hush, emotional circuits can replay charged material without the usual jolt. It's as if the room turns on soft lighting and lowers the volume so hard scenes can be watched without flinching. You wake remembering fragments, but what mattered wasn't the plot, it was the reduction in sting. Feelings get processed in a safer container when the alarm bells are muted. Follow that thread and a second mechanism appears, a cluster deep in your temporal lobe, the small almond-shaped evaluator of threat. becomes active, but it's coupled to a quieter front row of control than during the day. The pairing is deliberate. At night's theatre, the brain lets difficult scenes play while strong supervision rests, not because supervision is unneeded, but because over-control keeps wounds fresh. Here, the system leans toward exposure with care. Show the image, let the feeling surface, let it soften without being argued into submission. It is therapeutic, not because it proves a point, but because it gives the nervous system a chance to feel and release without new injury. A third feature of this mode is the flood of the brain's creative messenger, the one that supports plasticity and novelty. Daytime often pairs precision with control. This night window pairs novelty with safety. Associations that would never meet during the day shake hands. Faces blend with places. Ideas borrow from images. Problems hint at solutions sideways. The value here isn't logical deduction, it's recombination. You might wake with an odd scene rather than an answer, but later you notice that a decision feels easier or a plan seems more obvious. The theatre rearranged the furniture, so the door you needed was finally in sight. Let's take a step closer to the stagecraft. Right before and during these periods, pulses of activity sweep from deep visual structures toward the cortex, brief sparks that mark the start of a new scene. You don't perceive the sparks directly, you witness their aftermath as a cut, a shift in place, a jump in time. The system is experimenting with sequences. How would this feeling travel if paired with that image? How would this memory change if the context were softer? The sparks are the stage manager calling, lights, and the actors picking up their cues. It's choreography designed to loosen rigid links so tomorrow's triggers have fewer hooks. A practical consequence follows. Social pain heals more easily when this theatre runs well. Griefs, embarrassments, near misses in conversation, experiences that leave a fast heartbeat behind are prime candidates for nocturnal editing. You'll still care in the morning, but the edge that kept catching every thought is less sharp. That's not avoidance, it's reconsolidation. The memory returns to storage with a calmer tag attached. Daylight then meets a truer version of the event, important but not defining. You might wonder why dreams often carry more emotion than logic. Part of the answer is the role swap between regions. The systems that weigh meaning through feeling hold the mic here. The systems that enforce strict sequencing and rule checking let them. This doesn't make dreams irrational in a dismissive sense. It makes them optimized for a different task. The job at hand is to metabolize the charge, not to pass a test. The brain knows how to study for both kinds of exams. It just doesn't take them on the same night hour. There's also a protective paradox within this theatre. The body is both deeply relaxed and carefully restrained. Signals that would normally reach the spinal cord and move muscles are briefly damped at the source. This is the quiet harness that lets the mind explore without dragging the body along. You might feel a startle as you cross the boundary into or out of this state, the sudden sense of falling, the twitch that wakes the hand. These are boundary artifacts, not errors. They fade as the night finds its rhythm. Another small marvel, during this mode, your inner thermostat gives up tight control. The system that fine-tunes temperature lets go a little, which is part of why the room's climate matters more. Cooler air that doesn't fluctuate wildly supports the depth of the theatre. Heavy heat or sudden chills pull you back toward monitoring, a light layer for the body, a slightly cooler room for the core. This pairing respects the theatre's needs. You're helping the stage crew by not changing the set mid-scene. From a reflective angle, the theatre teaches a kinder approach to identity by letting you inhabit versions of yourself in symbolic form, confident here, clumsy there, reconciled with someone you miss, strong in a room that once made you small. The night grants practice in being many things without consequence. You're not pretending, you're rehearsing flexibility. Daylight then gains a little freedom. You can choose responses rather than repeat reflexes. The gift is small and cumulative, like a musician who improves not by one hard concert but by many quiet sessions. If you've noticed that late-night conflicts leave a longer echo the next day, this mode offers an explanation. Loading the theatre with fresh reactivity taxes it. The editing room has more raw footage than it can process gracefully, and the result can be restless scenes or shallow cycles that leave the charge partly intact. The lesson isn't to avoid life, it's to temper the last hour. Fewer sharp inputs, more slopes. You're not closing the theatre, you're giving it an editor's cut instead of a raw dump. So what can you do that's simple and respectful? Offer the theatre gentle prompts rather than hard directives. A short line on paper, naming a feeling without analysis. I was defensive with A, proud of B, worried about C, is enough. The system hears the labels and files them for night work. Add the breath pattern you've been practicing, a room with steady temperature, and a soundscape without sudden spikes, and you've signaled the crew. Scenes can run, edits can be made, safety is present. This is biology's version of kindness, not forcing change but inviting it. Creativity also benefits, and not by magic. Problems that resist direct pressure often yield to indirect reassembly. In the theatre, components are allowed to mingle without the supervisor's frown. The next day, you find a new framing, a fresh metaphor, a surprising first step. Artists and scientists alike have long noticed this, insights arriving after rest, and modern imaging gives the phenomenon a plausible base. Networks that normally compete become cooperative under this chemistry and this restraint. Cooperation is the night's superpower. There's a common worry tucked inside all this. If dreams sometimes carry fear, are they making things worse? Usually not. Fear inside the theatre is edited fear. You are watching with the alarm volume low and the exits clearly marked. The same scene played in daytime chemistry might reinforce the wound. Here, it's more likely to loosen it. If a dream jars you, the gentlest response is to treat it as a message delivered and processed rather than as a threat renewed. Thank you, system. Noted. That stance protects the next cycle from unnecessary vigilance. All of this theatre softened alarms, creative chemistry, safe rehearsal, sets the stage for the next task of the night, what to keep, what to reshape, what to let drift away. Emotional editing opens the door, structural editing walks through it. The handoff is quiet but potent. As the cycle tilts back toward deeper waves and then returns again, memory lines are strengthened or thinned, skills are nudged into tighter timing, and yesterday's lessons are stitched into longer stories. Which brings us to the next room on tonight's tour. You've seen how feeling is refined without words. Now we'll watch how knowledge and skill settle into place while you do nothing at all. Names becoming easier to recall, movements to feel smoother, tangled ideas to align. The edits happen in the dark, but the results greet you in the light. You've watched feeling soften on the night's stage. Now see how knowledge and skill find their shelves. While you rest, yesterday's moments replay in quieter form, not as complete films but as small clips, snippets of a route you walked, the names you met, the idea you wrestled with at noon. The seahorse-shaped archivist near the center of your head starts these replays, sending brief echoes out to the larger cortex. Each echo asks a question. Keep this. When other regions answer yes because the snippet fits something you already know, the connection thickens. If the answer is no, a different kindness occurs. The clip is left to fade. Memory at night is less about hoarding and more about curating. Those replays are not random, they often run in compressed time. Like a highlight reel fast-forwarded, the order still matters, because order teaches meaning. In the day, a conversation led to a decision. At night, the echo preserves that sequence, and the decision's path becomes easier to retrace without effort. The next morning, you notice the effect in tiny ways. Names emerge faster. The route through a new neighborhood feels less like guessing, and the argument you were building assembles with fewer gaps. You didn't think harder, you allowed the archivist to talk with the shelves. Here's a second, quieter adjustment that rides alongside replay. Synapses, the tiny contact points where cells talk, undergo a global tidy-up. Many of them, strengthened by the 1,000 small surprises of daytime, step down a notch together at night. This coordinated downscaling keeps the system from saturating and preserves contrast between what matters and what doesn't. It's like lowering all the dimmer switches in a gallery by the same amount, so the paintings you spotlighted still shine. The next day, learning can proceed without hitting a ceiling. You feel this as mental freshness rather than a specific memory. Effort buys more. The third thread is about categories. When new information fits a familiar frame, it settles more easily. When it doesn't, night tries to build a gentler frame for it. You might have read a fact that didn't make sense until it met an analogy you knew. Oh, it's like this. The night invites such meetings. Pieces that were stored in separate rooms are walked down the hall and introduced. The cortex loves these introductions. They reduce the cost of access, so tomorrow's recall is less like searching a warehouse and more like reaching to a well-labeled shelf. The day after that, the label is even clearer. You can sense the division of labor across the night's cycles. The tide of slow waves tends to favor stabilizing and protecting the structural bits. Facts, roots, finger sequences, while the theatre of vivid dreams leans toward integration and creativity, connecting feelings to facts and rehearsing variations. This is not a hard border, it's a tendency. The value is in the alternation. Build a scaffold under slower rhythms, then decorate and reorganize it under the vivid ones. A scale model becomes a living room. That's why you sometimes wake with not only a memory kept but a new way of using it. There's also a kindness in forgetting, and it's deliberate. Not every detail deserves shelf space. The system looks for redundancy, emotional charge, and usefulness. Redundant details are thinned, charged details are preserved but often softened, useful details are linked to cues that will matter later. You're spared the burden of carrying every variation of a moment. Think of a phone number you once needed daily and then didn't, how it faded without grief. That wasn't failure, it was a release of storage back to the living mind. Night performs these releases on your behalf. A practical angle makes this less abstract. Small, spaced exposures during the day, reviewing a name briefly in the afternoon, sketching the main idea once after dinner. Tell the archivist, this matters. The night then treats those items as candidates for strengthening. By contrast, frantic cramming ships too many clips at once. Some get in, but the filing is messy. You don't need perfection to enjoy the filing effect, you need signals. Even a 2-minute sketch of what you want to keep changes the priority list of the shelves. Skills benefit as well. If you're learning a new movement, typing a pattern, practicing a chord, refining a stroke, night encourages a cleaner timing of the sequence. In some stages, bursts of activity zip through motor areas like quiet metronomes, emphasizing the order and spacing of actions. Mistakes you kept making at dusk often appear less sticky at dawn, not because your muscles changed overnight, but because the plan for the movement was simplified and tightened. You'll feel it as less hesitancy between steps, fewer pauses where none are needed. The scaffolding of the move has fewer wobbly joints. What about language and ideas? Brief reactivations of the day's conversations, readings, and reflections cross paths with networks that handle meaning. If an idea can be rephrased in your own words before night, the replays have more anchors to grab and meaning becomes easier to retrieve later. This is why explaining something simply out loud to yourself in a few unhurried lines helps more than rereading it 10 times. The night prefers your version, it knows where to put it. There's also the matter of interference, the way new things push aside what came just before. Night reduces that shoving. By filing one cluster, then temporarily protecting it while another is handled, the system lowers the chance that today's learning will overwrite yesterday's. The alternation between waves and theatre is part of this protection. You wake less likely to confuse two similar names or two similar steps. The protection isn't perfect, it's good enough to spare you many tiny frustrations. A reflective angle adds gentleness to how you evaluate your own memory. When recall feels sticky, it often isn't a character flaw, it's a signal about conditions. Too much late input, too little alternation, a ledger overdrawn, or shelves too full of unfiled clips. You can respond by lowering intensity rather than raising judgment. 3 small choices: taper input, name the day, lengthen the outbreath, help the night do its work. The outcome is not flashy, it's functional ease. If you want an evening practice that respects this reweaving, try a short 3-line capture. 1 fact you want, 1 movement or micro skill you touched, 1 idea in your own words. No analysis, no study session, just pointers for the archivist. Then protect the first 90 minutes of night from sharp spikes, light, headlines, compelling threads. You're not abstaining, you're scheduling. The archivist hears the quiet and starts the sort. A final reassurance: the system is resilient. 1 poor night does not erase yesterday's learning, it delays the edit. When conditions improve, the work resumes. The architecture was built for fluctuations, not for perfect streaks. Accepting that removes a second burden, the stress about stress, and protects the next cycle. As memory settles, another partnership becomes easier to see, the one between your alarm evaluator and the quieting influence from the front of your mind. Emotional material that was softened in the theatre still needs to be handled by waking life. The day asks for gentleness backed by control. At night, the rehearsal for that balance begins. Alarms practice lowering, guidance practices timing, and the two learn to listen to each other. In the next section, you'll watch how top-down signals help the alarm center stand down, how that partnership steadies your days, and how small choices at night teach the pair to work together again tomorrow. By morning, the emotional edits of the night make it easier for two partners to work together. A small, almond-shaped sentinel that detects threat quickly, and a calmer guide near your forehead that weighs context. During the day, when you feel a jolt at a sudden sound, the sentinel fires first fast, protective, ancient. Moments later, the guide arrives with perspective. It's the dishwasher, a message preview, the wind. When evening supports has lowered background noise, this partnership becomes more graceful. The sentinel can still warn, it simply doesn't have to run the show. You experience this as space between a feeling and what you do next. A simple habit deepens that space. When you put a plain name on what moves inside, uneasy, tense, stung, language circuits in your left front brain light a small lamp for the guide. With a label, the raw charge is no longer a fog, it's a note with a subject line. The sentinel reads that note and eases. You aren't repressing, you're organizing. Think of it as changing a flashing red into a steady amber long enough to see the intersection clearly. This is why the tiniest sentence can change a minute. I'm bracing. The guide now has a handle to hold. From here, a second lever comes into view. Gentle reframing. When you remind yourself that a late reply might be about someone else's day rather than your worth, or that a schedule change is a logistics problem rather than a personal slight, the guide sends inhibitory signals back toward the sentinel. These are not lectures, they're quiet context cues. Time of day, past outcomes, present intentions. The sentinel isn't stubborn, it's busy. With context, it stands down. You feel this as a drop in urgency and a rise in options. The difference between must react and can choose. There's a timing trick that helps the guide do its work. Breath that favors a longer, softer exhale. The slightly slower heart rhythm that follows sends safety messages upward, and the guide uses those messages as leverage. When the body signals resources are available, top-down control costs less. If you've ever tried to talk yourself into calm while breathing hard, you know how expensive control can feel. Lower the physiological price, and wise choices come at a discount. This is the logic behind pairing thinking changes with bodily ones. Together, they add up to believable evidence. Another partner sits just behind the guide, a cingulate corridor that senses conflict and tracks effort. When the sentinel surges and the guide says wait, this corridor measures the mismatch and helps allocate attention. In the evening, with fewer pings at the sensory gate and a quieter newsroom, the corridor can spend its budget on genuine priorities rather than noise. That means fewer overreactions to small surprises. You catch yourself pausing before an email, choosing a gentler reply, or letting an item roll to tomorrow without a guilt tax. The corridor didn't make you softer, it made you fairer. What about fear that has lingered? The system has a method for untangling learned alarms. Repeated, safe encounters with the thing that once triggered you, each time with the guide present. In daylight terms, that's exposure with timing and care. At night, rehearsal supports it. By day, practice completes it. The guide learns to predict safety where the sentinel once predicted danger. That prediction, held long enough, sends a quieter template back down the line. You still notice the old cue, but it no longer drags you. The leash shortens, then slackens, and eventually the tug fades. There's a paradox that offers relief. Strong control in the moment is less important than consistent, light control over many moments. A single heroic effort to stay calm can work once. A dozen small repeated acts, naming, breathing, reframing, stepping away for 90 seconds, teach the circuitry a new default. The sentinel wants clarity more than dominance. When clarity keeps arriving, it trusts the guide faster. This is why tiny evening routines help the next afternoon's reactions. You've primed the partnership to recognize safety without a meeting. Social cues accelerate this learning. A warm tone directed at you primes the guide and sentinel to cooperate. Facial muscles relax. The heart stretches its restful intervals. Breath smooths. Then, when a small stress lands, the guide is already in the room. You can simulate this by choosing calmer messengers near night, a voice that doesn't rush, words that don't jab, pacing that doesn't chase. You aren't pretending the world is gentle. You're giving your training wheels an hour to work without gravel. There's also a reason disagreements resolved before late evening tend to stay resolved. As night chemistry comes on, your capacity to inhibit raw alarms improves in some ways, but narrows in others. Deep fatigue can make the guide inaccurate. The sweet spot for hard conversations is often earlier, when you can still recruit calm without slipping into depletion. If a topic is hot and the hour is late, a polite bookmark protects both brains. The sentinel won't be forced to defend with blunt tools, and the guide won't be asked to steer with a dim dashboard. You're not avoiding, you're scheduling competence. You may wonder about the mornings when you wake edgy, as if the sentinel beat the guide to the office. Several causes are ordinary: a jagged night, late stimulation, or an unfinished emotional clip still on the editor's table. The response is the same sequence you already own: low, nasal breaths with longer exhales, a small, accurate label for the feeling, a softer frame for the first task of the day. Often, within minutes, the guide catches up and the sense of being chased dissolves. You didn't conquer anything. You aligned processes that had slipped out of step. Metaphor can be medicine here. Imagine the sentinel as a lighthouse, quick to shine, crucial in storms. Imagine the guide as the harbour master, slower, concerned with patterns and timing. At night, the tide of slow waves and the theatre of dreams clean the lenses and update the maps. By day the light still shines, but the harbour master decides which ships to signal and which to let glide. Your job is not to snuff the light, it's to keep the radio clear so guidance can be heard. A small repeatable drill makes this practical. When you feel a spike, 1. To exhale longer than you inhale twice. 2. Name the feeling with one honest word. 3. Add a gentle frame, temporary, not about me or fixable. 4. Choose a tiny action that reduces stakes. Stand, sip, step outside a door. 4 moves under a minute. The sentinel receives body proof, language order, context kindness, and a behavioral exit. Very often it stands down. If it doesn't, you've still prevented escalation, which is a win many nervous systems only learn to appreciate with practice. There's comfort too in knowing that this top-down taming is not moral, it's mechanical and learnable. People differ in baseline settings. Some sentinels are hair-trigger, some guides heavy-lidded, some corridors frugal with effort. Traits aren't verdicts, they are starting points for training. Nights that protect rhythm make training easier. Evenings that choose slopes over spikes mean fewer drills under duress and more under kindness. Every rep counts, especially the quiet ones that no one else notices. As the partnership steadies, a different pathway begins to glow in the background, the one that connects your brain to heart, lungs, and gut in a long, meandering line of fibers. When this pathway hums in a certain pattern, it hands the guide extra leverage and gives the sentinel more reasons to relax. You've already been nudging it with breath and warmth, now it deserves the spotlight. In the next section you'll follow that line from chest to brainstem and back again, see how it carries reassurance upward, and learn simple ways to let it do more of the work for you. Running like a quiet highway from your chest and belly to your brainstem, there's a bundle of fibers that carry the body's news upward and send instructions downward. It is sometimes called the wandering nerve because of its long, branching reach. When its signals are calm and steady, the heart beats with flexibility, the breath moves without friction, digestion unfolds without hurry, and the brain reads the whole pattern as safety. You've already been speaking to it with slower exhales and gentle routines. Now let's watch how it listens, and what it does with the messages. One of the most direct messages comes from the heart itself. Every time your heart beats, the interval between one pulse and the next is slightly different. That variation, heart rate variability, is a language this wandering nerve understands. When the intervals stretch and shrink smoothly, it sends upward reports of stability. The brainstem receives these reports and dials down its alarm chemistry. The cortex then interprets the environment as less threatening. You feel this cascade as a grounded ease, alert but not twitchy, steady without stiffness. It's a physiological signature of safety. The gut speaks through this highway as well. Stretch receptors, chemical sensors, and muscular rhythms all send their updates. When digestion is calm, the reports read, "Resources available, no crisis here." The wandering nerve carries this reassurance to the brain, which reduces its need to scan for danger. By contrast, heavy late meals or irritants can fill the line with mixed or distressed messages, making the brain less willing to let go of vigilance. This is why light, predictable nourishment in the evening tends to feel better than abundance. It isn't about restraint for its own sake, it's about clarity of communication on the line. There's also a fascinating rhythm link. When you breathe slowly, the diaphragm presses downward, massaging abdominal organs and stretching tissues that the nerve innervates. Those stretch signals ride up to the brainstem in real time. On the inhale, the nerve activity dips. On the exhale, it rises. This rhythm is not a background quirk. It is a code that tells higher centers how to set the balance between readiness and rest. Long, unhurried exhales are the clearest way of saying rest in this code. The heart follows, The gut follows and the brain listens. A practical doorway into this pathway is something as simple as humming. When you hum gently, the vibration stimulates small branches of the nerve near your throat and chest. The body reads this as a rhythmic, non-threatening input, and the line sends back reports of calm. Singing softly, chanting, or even extended sighs work on the same principle. They are not mystical, they are mechanical, vibration translated into reassurance. That's why many people feel their chest loosen after a tune or mantra. It is your biology, not your imagination. Temperature cues add another layer. Warmth on the skin, especially at the neck or torso, can lower defensive muscle tone and feed quieter reports into the highway. Cold, by contrast, activates a different reflex, sometimes useful, sometimes not. A brief splash of cool water on the face can trigger a reflex that slows heart rhythm, but persistent chill raises alerting chemistry, so the kind choice is balance, cool enough for comfort, warm enough for the body to stop guarding. The wandering nerve then reports, safe range achieved. Social connection may be the most elegant signal. When you hear a voice with a gentle tone, your ear muscles, also touched by this nerve, adjust to favor frequencies common in human speech. That adjustment is itself a signal of safety. The same fibers that help you listen also feed back into the heart and lungs, easing their pace. A calm voice doesn't only feel good, it literally steadies the body's rhythms. This is why co-regulation, being near a calm other, works even without words. The line running through you is tuned to context, not only to chemistry. You can test this in miniature. Try placing one hand on the chest and humming softly during a long exhale. Notice the resonance, however faint. Behind the scenes, fibers are carrying that vibration into the same networks that regulate alarm and rest. Over a few minutes, heart rhythm steadies, breath deepens, and muscles soften. The wandering nerve is the courier that makes sure each system knows what the others are doing. Coherence spreads across the body, not because you forced it, but because you sent a message in a language the body understands. A reflective angle broadens this. Much of human ease comes not from removing all threats, but from creating overlapping signals of safety. The wandering nerve is the hub for these signals. Breath, voice, gut, heart, warmth, and company all converge here. When they agree, the system trusts. That trust becomes mood, outlook, patience. This isn't lofty philosophy, it's lived biology. A person who feels resourced reacts with less sharpness, chooses with more space, and can give kindness because their own system is convinced the ground holds. From a wider view, this nerve embodies interdependence. It reminds you that mind is not above body but braided with it. Calm doesn't come only from higher reasoning, it comes from loops that reach into lungs, heart, gut, and skin. You don't have to outthink your alarm, you can out-signal it gently, repetitively, kindly. That truth is liberating because it distributes the work. If thoughts won't quiet, let breath or hum or warmth take the first step. The line will carry the message upward, and the mind will eventually believe the body. This brings us naturally to another rhythm that cooperates with this wandering line, the beat of your heart itself. Not the average rate, but the subtle dance between beats, the coupling with breath, the dialogue with attention. The heart is not just a pump, it's a metronome for calm when the signals are right. In the next section, we'll walk through how your heartbeat guides the resting brain, how the intervals between pulses shape mood and focus, and how you can lean on that rhythm as a quiet anchor. Your heart is more than a pump, it is a metronome whose rhythm shapes the tempo of your inner world. Each beat is not identical to the one before it. The intervals stretch and shrink subtly, influenced by breath, posture, and state of mind. These micro-variations, far from flaws, are signs of flexibility. They tell your brainstem that resources are available and that it's safe to reduce vigilance. Through the wandering nerve you've just met, this beat-to-beat variability becomes a language. A flexible rhythm says calm, adaptable, steady. A rigid rhythm says prepare, guard, hold. You don't hear the words, but you live their consequences. When the intervals flex, higher centers of your brain listen. Circuits involved in focus and emotional balance read the signal and adjust their own thresholds. Attention stops jerking from one stimulus to another. It glides. Mood stops snapping between extremes. It steadies. You may have noticed this after a few minutes of steady breathing, when tasks feel smoother and feelings less jagged. That isn't just relaxation, it's coordination. The heart's rhythm is training the brain to find tempo again. Consider the link with breath more closely. On each inhale, the heart speeds slightly. On each exhale, it slows. This dance is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it's a window into your adaptability. When the dance is graceful, you feel it as ease, your mind doesn't grip as hard, and your body stops bracing against the world. When the dance is stiff, small stresses feel larger. The beauty is that the dance can be rehearsed gently. By letting the out-breath last longer, you extend the slowing phase, giving the brain more repeated signals of resources safe. Over time, the rhythm learns. Flexibility increases not by force but by repetition. There's another dialogue at work. Deep in your brainstem, a cluster measures blood pressure with each beat and sends adjustments to keep flow steady. This reflex too communicates upward. When it stabilizes smoothly, your cortex trusts the body's ground and spends less energy scanning. When it jerks, the cortex looks for reasons, sometimes inventing them as worries. This is one way bodily rhythms influence thoughts. A stable heart-handled reflex becomes a stable mind-handled narrative. You are less likely to create a story of danger when the beat tells you there is none. Practical choices shape this conversation. Physical activity during the day, not extreme but regular, strengthens the heart's ability to vary intervals. At evening, variability comes more easily, and the wandering nerve has richer signals to send upward. Gentle cooling of the room also supports it, because a body not guarding against temperature can let rhythm flow. Even the position you lie in matters. On your side, with shoulders open, the heart rests with less strain, and the signals it sends are clearer. Each choice is small. Together they make the heart a better messenger. Philosophically, the variability of your heart teaches resilience. Life is not about never changing pace, it's about adjusting pace with grace. A system that locks into one rigid rhythm, even if steady, is brittle. A system that can flex up and down without losing coherence is strong. This applies to your moods and choices as much as to your pulses. When the heart practices variability, the mind absorbs the lesson. You can bend without breaking, pause without collapsing, surge without splintering. Flexibility is not weakness, it is survival with elegance. If you'd like to test this directly, try a short evening drill. Breathe in gently for 4 counts, breathe out for 6, and add a soft hum at the end of the exhale. Place one hand lightly over your heart. Within a minute or two, you may notice not just calm, but a sense of wider space in thought. That is the brain listening to your heart's rhythm through the wandering nerve. The message has been delivered, adaptability is present, no emergency here. There's also a subtle social angle. Your heart's variability entrains with the people around you. When two people sit together calmly, their rhythms often sync tiny adjustments that make each system more flexible. This is why a calm companion eases your breathing and steadies your feelings without a word. Biology prefers harmony. In crowded or tense settings, rhythms can stiffen together, and everyone feels edgier. By protecting your rhythm, slower exhale, open posture, warm tone, you not only help yourself but gently nudge others toward steadiness. Calm is contagious because variability is. Memory and attention rely on this rhythm as well. When variability is high, the prefrontal regions of your brain, those guides that steady the sentinel, have better resources to allocate. You can resist distraction with less strain, solve problems with less friction, and switch tasks with less cost. You might not notice variability directly, but you notice its absence when focus feels brittle and choices feel forced. Training the rhythm is training the soil. Everything planted grows more easily. Of course, no rhythm is perfect every day. Stress, illness, and exhaustion all flatten the dance. The body then signals guard whether or not danger is present. Understanding this removes judgment. You aren't failing at calm, you're running with a temporary instrument. The practice is to accept those days, reduce demand, and trust that variability returns with rest and care. The resilience is built into the system. Your job is not to dismantle it by self-criticism. And here lies the cliffhanger. The heart's rhythm doesn't act alone. It cooperates with temperature signals that drift downward at night, cues that help the tide of waves rise, and the rinse continue. As the core cools and the skin warms, the brain reads another proof. It is safe to go deeper. In the next section, you'll see how these temperature shifts shape neural rhythms, why warm hands and cool rooms matter, and how the body's thermostat whispers to the brain that the night can unfold without alarm. As the night advances, your body begins a gentle thermal choreography. Deep inside, your core temperature drifts downward by about a degree, while at the surface, your hands and feet often grow warmer. This may seem contradictory, cooler within, warmer without, but it is the body's way of inviting neural rhythms to soften. Heat released through the extremities helps the inner core cool, and the brain reads this cooling as a signal to allow deeper rest. You've felt the transition on nights when your feet finally warm under a blanket and the whole body exhales as if given permission. The thermostat is speaking, and the brain is listening. Here's the first scientific layer, a small cluster behind your eyes. The body's internal thermostat regulates this dance. During the day, it holds your core steady against environmental shifts. At night, guided by circadian signals, it adjusts the set point downward. Blood vessels at the skin's surface open wider, especially in hands, feet, and face, letting heat escape. The shift is modest but crucial. Neurons sensitive to temperature in this region project to areas that control arousal. When cooling is underway, those arousal centers step down their output. You feel this as ease in settling, an unforced slowing of thought. Consider the role of skin warmth more closely. When your extremities are cool, blood flow stays central, and the core resists cooling. The thermostat then interprets "not ready" and keeps alerting systems active. When extremities warm, through socks, a light blanket, or simply a steady room, the vessels dilate, heat leaves, and the thermostat confirms readiness. That's why the simple act of warming the feet can sometimes tip the balance toward ease. The brain doesn't need logic, it needs evidence. Warm skin plus a cooling core equals the right conditions to dim wakefulness. There's a second subtler mechanism. The cooling of core temperature shifts the balance of certain neurochemicals. The output of wake-promoting messengers is temperature sensitive. As the thermostat lowers the set point, enzymes in these circuits slow, reducing their broadcast. Meanwhile, processes that favor slow waves and repair gain relative strength. It's a seesaw balanced on a single degree. This explains why even small disruptions, overheating from heavy covers, or chills from a draft, can jolt you back toward alertness. The thermostat reads the deviation and orders arousal circuits to guard. Comfort, then, is not luxury, it is alignment. You can sense the practical implications. A room slightly cooler than your waking comfort zone often helps the transition because it supports the core's drop. At the same time, adding a layer for the extremities keeps blood vessels open and supports the release of heat. The pairing cool room, warm hands and feet is not folklore, it is physiology. You're giving the thermostat consistent evidence to stay the course. Once the course is steady, the tide of slow waves rises more easily, and the rinse continues unbroken. From a reflective lens, this dance between warmth and coolness offers a metaphor for balance. To release, you sometimes need to let go at the center and find comfort at the edges. The paradox makes sense in biology and in life. Safety is strongest when it comes from both softness at the margins and calm at the core. You don't force balance, you allow it with small adjustments. The night teaches this quietly each evening if you listen. Another piece of the choreography involves posture and environment. Lying flat reduces the work of keeping blood pressure steady, making it easier for vessels to dilate and cooling to proceed. Darkness adds reinforcement. Light-sensitive cells in the eye send signals to the thermostat as well, supporting the downward shift. This is why dimming lights an hour before bed has more effect than only flipping them off at the end. The thermostat trusts gradual slopes more than sudden cliffs. Gradual tells it conditions will stay stable, and it allows cooling without fear. Think of heat management as part of your nightly communication stack. Just as breath, heart rhythm, and social tone send reassurance, so does temperature. A body trying to shed heat is a body asking for external support. Heavy covers that trap heat may feel comforting at first but can confuse the signal later. The better strategy is layering. Light covers you can adjust so the thermostat gets to stay in its window. When it stays there, brain circuits that generate slow waves and spindles can keep their tempo. You've cleared another hurdle to depth. The link with metabolism is quiet but real. Cooling supports the shift from daytime fuel burning toward nighttime repair. Enzymes that restore proteins, adjust membranes, and regulate energy molecules work more efficiently when the thermostat is set lower. The brain knows this. It has evolved to interpret a falling core as a green light for maintenance. If you've ever woken after a hot, restless night feeling foggy, you've seen what happens when the signal was blocked. It wasn't the missing hours alone, it was the missing call. A small experiment shows this effect. On one evening, keep the room warmer and notice your ease of settling. On another, drop the thermostat a few degrees, add a light layer to hands and feet and compare. Most people feel the difference in how quickly thought slows and how steady attention is the next morning. The comparison teaches your biology's preference without needing a lecture. Once you've felt the tide rise more easily, the choice to protect temperature becomes less of a chore and more of a kindness. Even dreams are touched by this. Because the thermostat relaxes its grip during certain vivid phases, your body can't regulate temperature as tightly. This makes the environment's steadiness more important. A sudden chill can pull you out. A surge of heat can push you toward shallow stages. Setting a stable climate is like keeping the stage crew from changing the scenery mid-performance. The story runs more smoothly when the set stays constant. As the thermostat does its work, another cue joins in, the fading of light and the rise of a quiet hormone that whispers timing to the body. Together, cooling and darkness tell every cell, it's night, coordinate. In the next section, you'll meet that whisper, see how it sets the clocks of your tissues, and learn how respecting its message smooths the path to the kind of calm you can trust. As the core cools and the room steadies, another signal steps forward, a whisper in the bloodstream that tells every clock in your body, it's night now. This messenger is melatonin, and it does not sedate you, it synchronizes you. Secreted by a small gland deep in the brain as evening light fades, it reaches tissues across the body, gently aligning them to the same schedule. Think of it less as a sleeping pill and more as a conductor, tapping the baton. Digestion slows, repair crews get ready, immune patrols shift their routes, and the brain begins leaning toward inward rhythms. You feel its presence not as a knockout, but as a soft pull toward coherence. The story begins with light. Special cells in the eye detect brightness, especially blue-rich wavelengths common in daytime. They send signals straight to a master clock in the brain, which in turn controls the pineal gland's release of melatonin. When evening comes and light dims, the suppression lifts and the hormone flows. If light remains strong, screens close to the eyes, overhead LEDs, late street glare, the message is confused and the release is blunted. The body's clocks then stay slightly out of sync. Digestion lingers, metabolism hesitates, alertness circuits keep humming. This is why a softened lamp feels so different from a bright one, even if you don't consciously notice. The clocks are listening. Melatonin's influence spreads widely. In the gut, it cues slower movement of food and shifts enzyme activity, sparing you from the churn of late digestion. In the immune system, it tilts balance toward surveillance and repair, a stance more sustainable overnight. In muscles and tissues, it signals time for growth and recovery pathways. And in the brain, it acts more as context than command. It tells neurons, reduce responsiveness to light, favor internal coordination, prepare for slow waves. You're not being pushed into unconsciousness, you're being gathered into alignment. There's a philosophical kindness in this. Melatonin doesn't argue with your choices, it adjusts to them. If you expose yourself to light late, it delays its rise. If you dim earlier, it flows earlier. This flexibility explains why travel and shift work unsettle you. The conductor is trying to retime the orchestra. It will succeed, but not instantly. Understanding this helps you remove blame. Feeling out of step after disruption isn't weakness, it's physics. Your clocks are negotiating a new treaty, and it takes a few nights. Practical habits make this treaty easier. Dimming overhead lights, using warmer tones, and lowering screen brightness in the last hour all reduce the suppression signal. Even better is stepping outside briefly in the morning, giving the master clock a clear anchor. Morning light locks the day start, evening dimming clears the night gate. Together they form a 24-hour handshake that strengthens the rhythm. When the handshake is reliable, your system spends less energy debating what time it is, and more energy repairing. You might ask, if melatonin doesn't make you sleep, why do supplements exist? The answer is timing. In people whose clocks are shifted because of travel, delayed schedules, or certain conditions, a small external dose can nudge the signal earlier or stronger, but the dose doesn't override the architecture. It works best as a whisper to an already listening system. For most people, the natural rise, supported by light management, is enough. This reminder is freeing. You don't need a pill for alignment if you give your clocks the cues they're built to trust. An overlooked detail is that melatonin also communicates with the thermostat you met earlier. As levels rise, the core's set point drifts downward, supporting the cooling that invites slow waves. This coupling explains why darkness and temperature together feel more powerful than either alone. Dim the room and allow a cooler environment, and you're not stacking comforts, you're synchronizing signals. The body loves converging data. From a reflective angle, melatonin invites you to think of night not as an interruption of productivity, but as part of productivity. It's the shift change in the factory, the quiet alignment of teams, so tomorrow's work is cleaner. Fighting it is like keeping the old shift on the floor until they collapse. Honoring it is like trusting that invisible hands are still working for you. You can measure productivity not only in hours of output, but in the quality of recovery those hours buy. Here's a gentle experiment. For 3 nights, choose a first dim moment, an hour before bed, when one main light goes off and only a softer source remains. Pair it with a brief step outside at morning, letting natural light strike the eyes. Don't change anything else. After a few days, notice whether the evening heaviness feels clearer, the morning alertness sharper. What you're noticing is your conductor reclaiming tempo. It's not discipline, it's alignment. A final kindness. Melatonin isn't the end of the night story, it's the prologue. It tells the body, prepare, but the quality of preparation depends on the context around it. Sound, for example, can support or hinder, while melatonin dims the inner lights. A sudden external spike can still pull the spotlight back to the stage. That's why the next element, soundscapes that smooth the edges, matters so deeply. They don't force sleep, they protect the fragile coherence melatonin builds. In the next section, we'll listen to how certain textures of sound mask disruptions, entrain rhythms, and act as auditory blankets, giving the brain one less reason to break its alignment. As your inner clocks align under the quiet guidance of melatonin, the outside world still sends ripples. A door closing, a car passing, a shift in plumbing, all can jolt the auditory gate, reminding the brain that vigilance is never fully off duty. But here's the gift. Not all sound is disruptive. Certain textures of noise, steady and soft, can mask the spikes and give the auditory system a stable backdrop. Among these, pink noise, the balanced cousin of white noise, holds a special power. Its energy is weighted toward the lower frequencies, closer to natural environments like rainfall or wind. To the brain, it feels less like static and more like landscape. Why does this matter? Because your auditory system is exquisitely tuned to change. A sudden tone, a sharp edge, a silence broken, the gate reacts quickly, and the sentinel you met earlier leans in. When sound is continuous and patterned, the gate relaxes. Pink noise, with its natural balance, makes sharp intrusions less distinct. It fills the valleys so the peaks don't startle. You might not notice the effect consciously, but your cortical rhythms do. In laboratory settings, pink noise has even been shown to increase the amplitude of slow waves, reinforcing the tide you learned about. The external rhythm and the internal rhythm cooperate. Here's another layer. The auditory cortex doesn't only process sound, it coordinates with attention and memory networks. When the input is jagged, those networks stay partially engaged, ready to react. When the input is smooth, they reduce their activity, freeing resources for repair. This is why a steady hum or gentle static often feels like a blanket. It's not distracting you, it's disengaging parts of the system that would otherwise stay alert. The brain learns, no news here, and attention drifts. Of course, not everyone prefers pink noise. Some gravitate to brown noise, deeper and softer, or to nature recordings like rainfall, ocean waves, or rustling leaves. The common thread is texture without sharp edges. Each provides a canvas rather than a story. A melody or a lyric pulls the cortex into passing and prediction. A texture lets it idle. What matters is not the label, but the effect, predictability that reduces the burden of monitoring. Your system isn't picky, it's pragmatic. There's a social angle here too. In evolutionary terms, soundscapes signaled safety when they carried familiar continuous cues. Wind through grass, insects at night, distant water. Silence was not always safe. It could mean predators nearby. Steady sound meant the environment was behaving normally. That ancient association lingers. A room too silent may feel eerie to one nervous system and comforting to another, but for many, a soft backdrop gives subconscious proof. The world is steady. You're not romanticizing nature, you're listening with old wiring. You might try this experiment. Play a gentle noise track at low volume for a week, then remove it. Many people notice not how much the noise helps, but how restless silence feels once it's gone. That restlessness is the gate missing its mask. Over time you can choose which you prefer, but knowing the mechanism frees you from superstition. You're not weak for needing sound, you're collaborating with a system designed to track change. Here's an overlooked point. Your auditory system entrains easily. If you expose it to steady, slow pulses like distant thunder rolls or synthetic beats matched to slow wave frequency, your cortex may sink to the tempo, nudging the tide deeper. This isn't hypnosis, it's resonance. Neurons love to fire in rhythm, and when the rhythm is slow, they save energy. You feel it as heaviness in the head, not forced but invited. Some devices attempt to harness this. Nature has been doing it forever with waves and storms. From a reflective lens, soundscapes remind us that calm is often about environment, not effort. You can't will your auditory cortex into ignoring a slam, but you can provide it with a steady hum that lowers the chance the slam will register. In life, as in biology, sometimes the most powerful strategies are not battles, but covers, textures that protect what is fragile by surrounding it, a curtain, not a wall. Practical applications are simple. Keep the volume low, choose a texture without peaks, and let it run without needing attention. Pair it with your dim light routine and your longer exhales, and you've built a 3-layer shield: visual, physiological, and auditory. None is perfect. Together they are sufficient. That sufficiency is all the system asks for. One more kindness. If you share space, soundscapes can serve both. Many households find that a soft backdrop reduces the burden of coordinating movements, whispers, or late tasks. The mask protects not only the sleeper, but the relationship. Harmony at night pays dividends in patience by day. But the orchestra of signals doesn't stop at ears and eyes. Touch, too, carries messages of safety or alarm, and the cortex reads them instantly. A blanket's pressure, the weight of a hand, the warmth of skin, each can reassure networks faster than words. In the next section, we'll explore how gentle touch speaks to the brain, why pressure calms circuits, and how a simple layer of fabric or contact can steady your inner weather. Touch is the most ancient of signals. Long before language, long before vision sharpened, creatures rid the world through contact. Your brain still honors that order. The surface of your skin is threaded with receptors tuned not just for pressure and temperature, but for texture, vibration, and even the caress of a slow stroke. Each sends information along dedicated fibers, some fast and precise, others slower and tuned specifically for comfort. When those slower fibers fire by a blanket's steady weight, by the warmth of a hand, by a gentle brush, the brain doesn't file it as data, it files it as safety. One of the clearest examples is deep pressure. When the body feels a consistent, even weight, like from a weighted blanket or a firm hug, nerve endings in muscles and joints report that the body is being held. The signals travel upward, dampening activity in alarm circuits. This is not imagination, it is circuitry. Pressure increases release of calming messengers while lowering stress chemistry. The result is a quieter body and a brain that reads contained. Many describe it as an exhale they didn't know they were holding. A second pathway comes from specialized fibers in hairy skin that respond best to slow, gentle stroking. Their messages travel along a different highway to regions that process emotion rather than location. The brain interprets such signals as effective touch, carrying an emotional tag. This is why a soft hand on the arm can calm more than a detailed explanation. The touch bypasses debate. It tells the sentinel, you are not alone, you are not in danger. At night, this pathway is easy to simulate with fabrics that glide softly, or by self-touch, resting a hand on the chest or cheek. The system doesn't ask who, it asks how. Temperature is another player. Warmth on the skin, especially at extremities, signals vasodilation and encourages the core to cool, as you learned earlier. But beyond physiology, warmth is encoded as social and environmental safety. A warm surface says someone tended the fire, someone guarded the camp. Cold, by contrast, often signals vigilance is needed. This is why even a small difference, a warm pair of socks, a heated pad for a few minutes, can change your readiness to release tension. You're not pampering, you're signaling. Rhythmic touch carries its own power. Rocking, swaying, or even a steady pulsing vibration can entrain brain rhythms through the vestibular system, which integrates movement and balance. Infants are soothed by rocking because their nervous systems learn timing and safety from repeated cycles. Adults retain this response, though subtler. A chair's gentle sway, a train's consistent motion, or even the slow drift of breath moving the torso, each feeds timing signals to the cortex. Rhythm plus touch equals reassurance. The absence of threatening touch matters too. A bed that doesn't poke, a fabric that doesn't itch, a pillow that doesn't demand constant adjustment. These are not luxuries, they are the removal of noise. When tactile inputs are neutral, the gate you met earlier doesn't need to flag them, attention can rest. This explains why tiny irritants, a scratchy tag, A misplaced seam can feel enormous at night. The cortex is starved for quiet, and every pebble becomes a rock. Removing them is not fussiness, it's hygiene for the senses. From a reflective lens, touch teaches a truth about boundaries. To feel safe, you don't always need more space. Sometimes you need the right kind of closeness. A steady weight, a gentle stroke, a warm layer, each is a boundary that reassures rather than confines. Life offers many boundaries, not all are kind. Night teaches you to seek the ones that protect without trapping. In this, blankets and embraces become metaphors. You can be held without being caged. Practical habits can harness this. If you sleep alone, try a heavier blanket or a body pillow that simulates pressure. If you share space, a brief embrace before turning in can shift chemistry for both, even if you then sleep apart. If fabrics irritate, choose softer textures, not for fashion, but for nervous system peace. If warmth helps, cover extremities lightly. If coolness helps, uncover them. Each choice is a dialogue with receptors that speak directly to the brain's emotional circuits. Even self-touch is powerful. Resting a hand over the heart or belly during slow breathing combines 3 signals at once: tactile pressure, warmth, and rhythmic motion. The brain interprets this as a signal it once received from caregivers. You are safe, you are held. Doing it for yourself is not lesser, it's recognition that your biology still listens. Such gestures cost nothing and give the sentinel fewer reasons to guard. Touch also links to memory. Familiar textures, an old quilt, a well-worn shirt carry associations stored in the cortex. When these are positive, the tactile signal comes with an emotional echo. Times of safety, moments of care, you can choose these intentionally, surrounding yourself with fabrics or objects that have history. The brain will not only process the physical sensation, but also the memory tag, layering reassurance upon reassurance. A final thought here. Touch is the first sense to develop in the womb and the last to fade at life's end. It is the baseline of connection. At night, when other senses quiet, touch remains a direct line. Respecting it, through weight, warmth, softness, rhythm, is respecting your most ancient form of communication. You're not pampering the body, you're speaking to it in its native tongue. And touch leads naturally to another physical signal, the chemistry of food and drink. What you consume in the hours before night sends molecules into the bloodstream that either calm the system or keep it busy. In the next section, we'll see how nutrients, timing, and small choices shape the night's architecture and why simplicity often helps the orchestra of sleep play in tune. What you place into your body in the last hours of the day is more than nourishment, it is communication. Molecules from food and drink circulate into tissues, sending signals that either reinforce the orchestra of night or keep sections of it playing daytime music. The brain is particularly sensitive here because it relies on steady chemistry to build rhythms. Too much stimulation, too late, and the conductor struggles to hold tempo. The lesson is not austerity but alignment, small, simple choices that harmonize with the signals already rising. Begin with caffeine. It works, as you've learned, by occupying adenosine seats, the receptors that signal enough for today. When taken late, it blocks the ledger's honest message, leaving alertness circuits humming long past their shift. For some, even afternoon doses linger into the night, because their livers process the molecules slowly. The result is not always obvious wakefulness. Sometimes it shows up as lighter, more fractured cycles, fewer slow waves, and a rinse less efficient. You may not remember being awake, but you feel it as a duller clarity the next day. Respecting caffeine's half-life, ending intake by early afternoon, means respecting the night's accounting system. Alcohol tells a different story. It sedates quickly, making eyelids heavy, but sedation is not architecture. As the liver processes ethanol, rebound signals activate, fragmenting the later cycles when memory filing and emotional editing would normally flourish. The rinse too is impaired, because vascular rhythms and cellular coordination stumble under alcohol's influence. You may sleep through, but the restorative quality is thinner. This is why 2 nights of abstention often feel markedly clearer after a period of late-night drinks. The system isn't moralizing, it's asking for steady conditions to run its repairs. Then there's food itself. Heavy, rich meals near bedtime keep the gut working vigorously, sending signals of activity upward. The wandering nerve carries those signals to the brainstem, which interprets them as resources in use. Repair pathways, which share budget with digestion, then receive less. By contrast, lighter evening meals, moderate portions, simple composition, free resources for maintenance. Timing matters too. Finishing 2 or 3 hours before bed gives the system enough time to wind down. Again, the principle is not deprivation, it's giving the orchestra fewer competing scores to read. Certain nutrients play helpful supporting roles. Foods rich in tryptophan, a precursor to serotonin and later melatonin, can tilt chemistry gently toward night. Milk, nuts, seeds, and whole grains contribute here, though the effect is modest compared to light and rhythm. Magnesium, found in leafy greens, legumes, and dark chocolate, supports muscle relaxation and acts on inhibitory circuits in the brain. These aren't magic bullets, they are whispers that align with the body's own plan. When paired with dim light, cooling, and quiet, they add weight to the scale. Hydration is another balancing act. Too little fluid during the day raises the risk of cramping and wakeful thirst. Too much late sends the bladder as a disruptor. The simplest pattern, steady intake earlier, tapering as evening comes, provides the clearest signal. A small warm drink without stimulants can even serve as ritual, telling the system we're landing. Chamomile or lemon balm may offer trace phytochemicals that nudge relaxation, but often it is the warmth, the routine, and the absence of sharp molecules that does the work. Philosophically, evening consumption invites reflection on sufficiency. How much is enough to sustain, and when does more become noise? Your biology answers nightly. A light, balanced meal feels sustaining and lets the orchestra tune. Excess feels heavy, not because fullness is shameful, but because the night cannot run 2 concerts at once. To honor the night is to honor limits, not as punishment, but as wisdom. Social customs weave into this too. Many cultures embrace lighter suppers, communal teas, or timed fasts, not from modern science but from centuries of noticing the body's preference. These traditions show that the balance between nourishment and rest is older than data. Modern understanding simply adds mechanism, circadian enzymes, adenosine clearance, synaptic pruning. The old wisdom and new science point in the same direction. Ease comes when intake bows to timing. If you want a practical trial, try shifting your last main meal earlier for a week. Keep it nourishing but not heavy, and let the final hour be free of stimulants and large portions. Pair it with the light dimming routine you've practiced. Notice how the heaviness of the eyelids feels more like alignment than collapse, how waking clarity feels less like luck and more like architecture. The effect may not be dramatic on the first night, but over several, the orchestra will thank you with steadier performances. And yet, nourishment is not only molecular, it is also social, emotional, contextual, eating in calm rather than in haste, sharing food with warmth rather than screens, sets chemistry differently. Cortisol, insulin, and gut signals all respond not just to what is eaten, but how. An unrushed meal is a signal of safety, and the wandering nerve carries it upward. This truth widens the meaning of diet. It is not simply substance, it is atmosphere. From here, the path leads naturally to movement. Just as food communicates through chemistry, motion communicates through muscle, joint, and circulation. What you do with your body in the day shapes how deeply the orchestra can play at night. In the next section, we'll see how activity primes rhythms, why timing of exercise matters, and how even gentle movement can tilt the balance toward a night that repairs. Movement is a language your body speaks fluently, and the brain listens closely to every word. During the day, activity primes circulation, oxygen delivery, and metabolic flexibility. It also sculpts the rhythm of hormones that influence alertness and rest. When evening comes, the record of how you moved becomes part of the orchestra's sheet music. Too little motion, and signals of stagnation creep in, circulation sluggish, temperature less dynamic, energy molecules lingering. Too much motion too late, and the system misreads it as daytime persists. The balance is in timing and texture, movement that energizes by day, gentler forms that soothe as night approaches. Here's the first mechanism. Exercise elevates body temperature and stress hormones acutely, but then prompts a compensatory drop in both afterward. That drop, if allowed to occur with time before bed, dovetails with the natural cooling and calming you learned about earlier. Morning or afternoon exercise therefore enhances nighttime slow waves, increasing the amplitude of the tide and improving the rinse. By contrast, heavy late exercise can delay cooling and keep alert chemistry circulating. The takeaway is not avoidance but scheduling, letting the orchestra finish the crescendo before the conductor calls for calm. A second pathway comes from circulation itself. Muscular contractions act as pumps that move blood and lymph, clearing byproducts more efficiently. This reduces the burden on the night's rinse, making the cleaner's job easier. In brains imaged after regular daytime activity, clearance pathways appear more robust, and cognitive clarity follows. You don't feel the cleaning in the moment, but you feel the dividend as sharper memory and steadier focus the next morning. Movement, in this sense, is pre-cleaning. It takes some trash out before the night shift arrives. Third, movement influences neurochemistry in ways that echo into night. Aerobic exercise boosts levels of a growth factor that supports plasticity, the brain's ability to reshape connections. When evening comes, the replay and filing processes you learnt about earlier have more fertile ground, new memories stabilize more efficiently, and emotional editing is smoother. This is why learning paired with physical activity often consolidates more effectively than learning alone. The day moves, the night edits. The result is stronger integration. Gentle activity near nightfall has its own gifts. Stretching, walking, or slow yoga shifts the autonomic balance toward rest. Muscles send signals of lengthening and reduced tension, carried upward by the same wandering nerve that reports safety. The brain interprets these as no need to guard, reducing baseline vigilance. Pair this with longer exhales, and the effect multiplies. It is not exertion, it is signaling. The orchestra reads wind down and adjusts accordingly. Philosophically, movement teaches a paradox similar to touch. Stillness is not the absence of action, but the consequence of prior action. A body that has moved during the day rests more willingly at night. A body denied motion often resists rest because it has unspent signals of energy. This reframes exercise from a duty to a kindness. It is an offering to your future stillness, not a punishment for your past stillness. Consider a practical experiment. For 1 week, place your main activity earlier, morning or midday, and in the evening replace any heavy exertion with a gentle, rhythmic walk. Keep the pace unhurried, breathe through the nose, and let arms swing freely. Notice how the next day's clarity feels. Many find that even if sleep onset is unchanged, depth and refreshment are improved. You're aligning your activity's arc with the orchestra's score. Timing matters in subtle ways. Strength training or vigorous cardio in the early evening may still be fine if you allow a 2 to 3 hour buffer. The rise and fall of body temperature, plus the clearance of alert chemistry, need time. If your schedule only allows late sessions, coupling them with cooling strategies, shower, lighter clothing, dimmed lights helps mitigate delay. Again, the principle is not rigidity but cooperation with physiology. There's also a social layer, shared movement. Walking with a friend, stretching with a partner, playing with children, combines the benefits of exercise with the co-regulation of tone and laughter. The brain encodes not just the muscular signals, but the emotional context, layering safety onto exertion. This makes the later shift into rest easier, because the day's activity was colored with warmth, not strain. Your system remembers atmosphere as much as output. From another angle, stillness at night is more than a lack of motion. It is its own kind of movement. Breathing becomes slower, heart rhythms lengthen, eyes roll gently beneath lids. Each of these is a motor act, just quieter. Respecting daytime motion makes the night's motion smoother. In this way, activity and rest are not opposites but partners in a dance. Movement also influences mood chemistry. Regular daytime activity reduces baseline levels of stress messengers, which means the sentinel you met earlier starts from a calmer place. At night, this translates into fewer intrusions from alarm and a more stable alternation of waves and dreams. The consistency matters more than intensity. 10 minutes daily may signal safety more effectively than an hour once a week. You're teaching your biology a rhythm, not winning a competition. As your body integrates the signals of movement, another input continues to work in the background, light. You've touched on how it shapes melatonin, but its influence is broader, setting the clocks that govern every tissue. In the next section, we'll explore how light anchors the rhythm of wake and rest, why morning brightness matters as much as evening dimness, and how even brief exposure can recalibrate the orchestra's timing. Light is the master signal of time. More than meals, more than movement, it is brightness striking the eye that tells every cell whether to lean into day or yield to night. Deep in the retina, a small set of cells isn't designed for vision at all, but for measurement. They register overall brightness, especially in the blue spectrum of morning sky, and send their reports directly to the brain's master clock. From there, signals ripple outward, adjusting hormone release, temperature rhythms, digestive timing, and even the immune system's patrol routes. One glance at the morning sun resets the entire orchestra. This master clock, a cluster of neurons behind your eyes, runs close to, but not exactly 24 hours. Without external cues, it drifts. Light provides the correction. Morning light pushes the clock earlier, late light pushes it later. This explains why bright screens at midnight can delay melatonin's rise, leaving you alert when the body hoped to quiet. It also explains why stepping outside soon after waking anchors you. The clock sees the early spike of brightness, adjusts its hands, and tells the pineal gland, melatonin begins in about 14 hours. That prediction shapes everything downstream. There's a practical elegance here. You don't need hours of exposure. A brief walk in natural light, even on a cloudy day, delivers many times more lux to the retina than indoor bulbs. 10 to 15 minutes can anchor the rhythm robustly. Add movement, and you reinforce the signal further, because the wandering nerve also carries reports of activity upward. The orchestra loves redundancy. Multiple cues saying it is morning set a stronger tempo than any single one. Evening light works in reverse. Blue-rich brightness close to the eyes says delay the night, keeping melatonin suppressed. Warm, dim light says let the night rise. This is why candles, lamps with warmer tones, or screen filters feel different. You're not just altering mood, you're altering biology. When the master clock detects low light, it permits the pineal gland to whisper melatonin, which you met earlier. The shift is gradual, but reliable if you let it be. Dimming gradually is more effective than sudden darkness, slope, not cliff. Light also talks to mood. The same retinal cells that measure brightness connect to brain regions that regulate emotion. Insufficient morning light is linked with lower mood and higher risk of seasonal sadness. Ample morning light, in contrast, supports serotonin pathways that brighten outlook. This isn't just correlation, it's physiology. You are a diurnal being, built to calibrate mood with sun. When you provide that cue, you're not chasing happiness, you're allowing baseline chemistry to balance. From a reflective angle, light teaches humility. We often imagine ourselves independent of nature, yet a few minutes of brightness or dimness can shift hormones, mood, and metabolism. The body doesn't care about cultural schedules, it listens to photons. Respecting this doesn't make you primitive, it makes you aligned. You can live modern life more gently when you treat light as partnership rather than backdrop. Practical habits flow easily from this. Seek morning light soon after waking outside if possible, near a window if not. In the afternoon, a brief exposure can reinforce alertness without delaying night. As evening approaches, reduce blue-rich brightness, especially from screens held close. Warm-toned lamps or dimmers help. Protect the last hour as a gradual fade. If nighttime light is unavoidable, keep it low and indirect, letting most receptors rest. Each choice is small. Together they write the day's rhythm. There's also nuance. Light at night is not always harmful. If it is predictable and dim, a steady, warm source may be less disruptive than sharp flashes. The gate you met earlier responds most to change. Consistency allows partial adaptation. If safety requires a nightlight, choose one low and amber. It won't undo the orchestra's progress. Biology is forgiving when cues are gentle. Consider a micro-experiment. For 1 week, step outside within half an hour of waking, no sunglasses if comfortable, and face the open sky for at least 10 minutes. In the evening, dim main lights 1 hour before bed. Do not alter anything else. Most people notice sharper alertness in the morning and clearer heaviness in the evening within days. That clarity isn't psychological trickery, it's your master clock resuming its intended lead. Light also communicates with temperature, feeding back into the thermostat you met earlier. Brightness in the morning cues a rise in core warmth. Dimness at night cues its decline. Together, they orchestrate the wave of readiness and rest. When the two signals agree, your rhythms are smooth. When they conflict, bright light at midnight, no light at dawn, your rhythms stumble. The correction is not dramatic intervention, it is a return to alignment. And light sets up the final element of the orchestra, timing itself. When clocks across the body agree, repairs run on schedule. Digestion yields gracefully, immunity strengthens, and mood steadies. In the next section, we'll explore this deeper layer of circadian alignment, how every tissue keeps its own clock, why synchrony matters, and how simple anchors like meals, movement, and light combine to keep the system coherent. Every tissue in your body keeps time, not just the brain's master clock, but the liver, muscles, skin, even immune cells each follow their own cycles. They rise and fall in activity, guided by local genes that switch on and off in patterns near 24 hours long. Left alone, these clocks drift apart. One organ might still think it's day while another insists it's night. What prevents this chaos is synchrony, cues from light, meals, movement and temperature that align the orchestra. When they agree, you feel rhythm. When they scatter, you feel fog. The master clock in your brain acts as conductor, but it needs help. Morning light is its baton, setting tempo. Food acts as sheet music for the digestive section. Eating at consistent times tells the gut and liver when to work. Movement cues muscles, reminding them when to expend and when to repair. Even temperature shifts, as you've learned, add reinforcement. These inputs do not need to be perfect, they need to be steady. The orchestra doesn't demand virtuosity every day, only that everyone play in roughly the same key. Why does synchrony matter so much? Because many processes depend on sequence. Hormones rise and fall in order, not randomly. Cortisol peaks near morning to mobilize energy, then tapers. Growth signals climb at night to repair tissue. Immune patrols shift routes based on timing. If clocks disagree, sequences tangle. You wake groggy, eat when digestion is half asleep, or feel wired at midnight when the repair crew should be on duty. Synchrony saves energy by avoiding these collisions. It's less work to keep order than to patch over disorder. There's a memory angle here as well. Studies show that when clocks align, the replay and filing you learnt about earlier run more efficiently. Memories not only consolidate better, but interference between them is reduced. Skills practiced in rhythm with the body's cycles improve faster. Out-of-sync timing blunts these gains. You can feel this difference. Learning sticks more easily on days with regular meals and light exposure. It's not discipline, it's biology, making the path smoother. Nutrition timing illustrates this vividly. Late-night meals deliver calories when the liver's clock has already dimmed its metabolic enzymes. The result is slower processing and signals of mismatch sent upward. The brain, sensing conflict, often keeps arousal higher. Daytime meals, by contrast, arrive when enzymes are tuned to handle them, and the signal is all systems aligned. You don't need strict schedules, you need predictable slopes. Breakfast at a consistent range, dinner not too late, snacks earlier rather than at midnight. You're feeding not just yourself but the clocks. Movement is similar. Muscles expect activity during daylight. When exercised, they adjust their gene expression to anticipate more. If you move consistently, even gently, their local clocks line up better with the master rhythm. The result is smoother coordination, better energy use, and clearer rest at night. Inconsistency doesn't break the system, it just scatters it. Think of a choir without rehearsal. The notes are there, but they don't land together. Regular movement is rehearsal. Temperature cues complete the loop. The thermostat you met earlier influences not just sleep onset but circadian alignment. Cooling at night signals to peripheral clocks that it is time to slow. Warming in the morning does the opposite. This is why natural environments, day heat, night cool, help anchor rhythms. In modern life, you can mimic this with small adjustments. A cooler room at night, a bit of sunlight or warmth in the morning. The body trusts gradients, it doesn't need extremes. Philosophically, circadian alignment speaks to cooperation. Each part of you has its own intelligence, its own cycle. No single part rules absolutely. Health emerges when they listen to one another and the environment. This mirrors human communities. Diversity of roles, unity of timing. Harmony doesn't erase individuality, it organizes it. The night reminds you of this truth, quietly, by showing how many clocks must agree for you to feel at ease. If you'd like a simple practice, choose 3 anchors. 1 in the morning, 1 midday, 1 evening. Morning, step outside for light. Midday, move for 10 minutes. Evening, dim lights and reduce input an hour before bed. Keep them steady for a week. Notice how meals, mood and energy fall into line without being forced. The system loves anchor points. It fills the rest itself. There's resilience built in. Even if one night scatters, the clocks look for the next cue. You are not fragile glass. You are elastic fabric. Each day is another chance to reset alignment. This truth offers relief. You don't need perfection, only persistence. And so, with clocks in order and signals aligned, the orchestra of your biology reaches coherence. You've traced how breath, heart, temperature, chemistry, light, touch, and rhythm all combine to whisper safety to the brain. In the next section, we'll bring these threads together, showing how coherence itself is the secret behind clarity, calm, and resilience both at night and in the days that follow. When all the signals you've explored converge, breath steady, heart rhythm flexible, temperature balanced, light timed, meals gentle, movement consistent, sound softened, touch reassuring, the result is coherence. Coherence is not perfection, it is a pattern where body and brain stop contradicting each other. Every system can play its part without shouting over the rest. You feel this as clarity, calm, and the subtle joy of things fitting together. It is the opposite of friction. Scientifically, coherence shows up in rhythms, syncing across levels. The heartbeat and breath fall into smooth ratios. Brain waves align more with slow cycles. Hormones rise and fall in better sequence. Immune signals flow without surging unnecessarily. Even at the cellular level, energy production runs more efficiently when clocks agree. The orchestra you've been following doesn't produce silence, it produces harmony. This harmony is what frees resources for repair, memory, and emotional balance. There's an emotional face to coherence too. When systems stop competing, the sentinel in your brain calms, the guide can give perspective, and feelings stop dragging as strongly. Thoughts feel less sticky, choices feel less forced. You may still face the same challenges, but you approach them with more slack in the rope. That slack is the room to respond instead of react. It's a physiological gift with philosophical consequences. Coherence lets you live with more agency. Daily experience confirms this. On mornings after coherent nights, your focus doesn't strain. Tasks flow without the extra cost of fighting distraction. Interactions with others carry more patience because your system isn't burning resources on hidden battles inside. Even creativity benefits. When background noise is low, your mind can combine ideas more freely. The orchestra isn't silent, it's playing at a tempo that makes improvisation possible. What disrupts coherence most is mismatch. Light at odds with clocks, food at odds with digestion, movement absent or mistimed, signals of danger from sound or touch at the wrong hour. Each mismatch is a small source of static. None destroys the system alone, but together, static accumulates into fatigue. The antidote is not obsessing over every cue, but creating a few reliable anchors. The system is forgiving. Give it 3 or 4 steady signals, and it can compensate for the rest. From a reflective perspective, coherence is a lesson in alignment beyond biology. Just as your tissues thrive when they agree on time, your days thrive when your actions agree with your values. Misalignment produces friction. Alignment produces flow. Night rehearses this truth with your body, so you can practice it in life. The wisdom is simple. Scattered signals scatter you. Coherent signals steady you. Practical experiments can strengthen this coherence. Choose 1 week to emphasize rhythm. Light in the morning, food at regular intervals, movement most days, dimming in the evening. Don't worry about perfection. Simply notice how much easier focus, patience, and recall feel. You're not forcing change. You're experiencing what the system is capable of when signals agree. That experience itself becomes motivation, because coherence feels like relief. Coherence also explains resilience. When systems are in sync, disruptions recover faster. A late night doesn't collapse the architecture. The next day's anchors pull it back. Travel across time zones doesn't erase stability. Repeated light and meals rebuild it. Illness doesn't scatter you indefinitely. Clocks resynchronize with routine. This resilience is what allows humans to adapt across latitudes, seasons, and challenges. Coherence is the baseline we return to when given the chance. Here lies the deeper philosophy. Rest is not passive, it is active synchronization. The work of the night is to take scattered signals and weave them back into order. You are not wasting time by yielding to rest. You are rebuilding the very pattern that lets you function. Productivity measured without coherence is fragile. Productivity built on coherence is sustainable. You might try a final evening gesture to invite coherence. Sit quietly for 3 minutes. Place a hand over the chest. Inhale gently. Exhale longer. Hum softly. Dim the nearest light. Adjust covers so feet are warm. Core is cool. Whisper 1 line that closes the ledger of the day. In those 3 minutes, you have spoken in every language: breath, heart, light, temperature, touch. The orchestra hears the cues and begins its symphony. You have not forced coherence. You have invited it. And yet coherence is not the end. It is the condition that allows the night's true restoration, repair of tissue, replenishment of energy, and a morning that carries not just clarity, but readiness. The last step is integration. how all the signals you've nurtured converge into resilience that lasts beyond the night. In the next and final section, we'll watch how the orchestra closes its performance, how the night restores the day, and how honoring this cycle can turn ordinary evenings into foundations for a steadier life. By now the orchestra is fully assembled. Breath, heart, temperature, hormones, touch, sound, light, food, and movement have all taken their places. What remains is integration, the closing movement, where each theme you've heard weaves together into resilience. The night is not only a pause, it is repair, preparation, and renewal. When the performance is complete, you awaken not merely rested, but rewoven. Threads frayed by the day are tightened. Energy, once spent, is replenished. Emotional edges, softened in dreams, become manageable contours. This is the hidden purpose of night, to restore the possibility of balance. On the physical level, integration looks like repair. Muscles micro-torn by effort rebuild, guided by growth hormones released in slow-wave stages. Immune cells patrol, identify intruders, and store memories of threats for faster defense later. Neurons reset their sensitivity, trimming back connections that grew noisy and strengthening those worth keeping. Even your skin, exposed all day to light and stress, regenerates more vigorously at night. Every tissue has work scheduled in these hours, work invisible to you, but vital to your future. The orchestra plays not for applause, but for maintenance. Energy replenishment is another refrain. Inside each cell, mitochondria, the power stations, clear byproducts and reset capacity. Glycogen stores in the brain are refilled, ensuring tomorrow's thinking won't run dry too soon. This explains why fatigue after poor nights is not only mental fog, but physical heaviness. Your tanks were not refilled. With steady cycles, the refill is complete, and the day feels lighter, even if the workload is unchanged. You don't gain more hours, you gain more usable energy in the hours you have. Emotional integration may be the most subtle. Dreams revisit charged material, replaying it with altered tone, new combinations, softened endings. This process, though mysterious, reduces the grip of intense feelings. The amygdala, calmed by frontal input, learns that the storm has passed. By morning, the sharpness dulls into perspective. You may not remember the dream, but you feel its work, less reactivity, more space, a readiness to try again. Night edits not to erase, but to make bearable. Memory integration completes the quartet. Facts practiced, skills rehearsed, names repeated, all are sorted, strengthened, or pruned. Redundancies are thinned, essentials are kept, interference is reduced. The next day, recall feels smoother, not because you forced yourself, but because the archivist filed overnight. Each night is a librarian's shift, and coherence provides the quiet needed to do the job well. Without it, shelves grow messy. With it, knowledge is accessible. Philosophically, integration is about wholeness. You are not a list of parts, heart here, breath there, memory elsewhere. You are a system, and the system's strength lies in cooperation. The night shows you that healing comes not from domination, but from dialogue. Every cue you nurture, dim light, steady breath, warm touch, is a conversation with your own biology. Integration is the dialogue reaching harmony. The lesson for waking life is profound. Wholeness requires listening, not forcing. Practical reminders close the circle. Protect morning light to anchor the clock. Respect evening dimness to allow melatonin's rise. Eat with consistency. Move daily. Taper stimulants. Cool the core. Warm the extremities. Soften sound. Welcome touch. None of these needs perfection. Together, they build enough coherence for integration to proceed. Biology doesn't ask for flawlessness. It asks for predictability. Your role is to offer the cues. The night does the rest. Integration also means resilience. With systems aligned, disruptions no longer unseat you so easily. A late night becomes a delay, not a collapse. A stressful day becomes a ripple, not a flood. Your body learns to recover faster because it trusts its own rhythm. This resilience extends beyond sleep. Patience in traffic, focus at work, warmth in conversation, all are fed by the invisible work of integration. Night quietly writes the script for day. And so the orchestra closes, not with silence, but with readiness. As dawn filters in, clocks hand off to the new cycle. Cortisol rises gently to mobilize energy. Temperature climbs, melatonin fades, appetite stirs, and the heart takes up a brisker tempo. You awaken not only because rest ended, but because integration succeeded. The day begins with more resources than it ended with. That is the gift of the night's work. The final reflection is this: you don't need to command the orchestra, you only need to respect its conditions. By dimming lights, breathing longer, softening sound, choosing gentle touch, and aligning food and movement, you are giving the conductor the stage. The music will play, as it has for thousands of nights before, weaving safety into coherence and coherence into integration. All you must do is allow. And with that allowance, the day ahead carries a different weight, not lighter because tasks vanish, but lighter because you are more whole to meet them. Night restored what day consumed. That is the most relaxing fact of all. You are built to renew. You've walked through the orchestra of night, watched how breath, heart, light, temperature, food, touch, sound, and rhythm all send their messages, and seen how the brain weaves them together into coherence. Now it is time to let the pace slow, to let the words lengthen, to let the thoughts soften into something less like explanation and more like atmosphere. Imagine the entire day folding itself away, not erased but carefully placed on a shelf. The questions can wait. The clocks will keep time without you. Your role is simply to let the orchestra play on. There is no need to hold tightly now. Every system knows its part. The heart has its rhythm, the breath has its flow, the brain has its patterns, the body has its wisdom. Even without your effort, the cycle continues. The tide of slow waves will rise and fall. The rinse will clear. The memories will settle. The emotions will soften. You are not the conductor tonight. You are the listener, carried gently by music older than you can remember. And as you sense this, you can imagine the night as a landscape stretching wide and calm, lit only by quiet signals: heartbeat, breath, warmth, coolness, stillness. Each is a star in the sky of your biology, steady and reliable. You don't need to count them. You only need to notice they are there. They shine for you without demand. They guide you whether or not you pay attention. So let this be enough. Let the day end where it is. Let the night carry what it knows how to carry. Trust that renewal is built in, that coherence is already gathering, that integration is already underway. You have arrived at the place where effort is no longer required. You are whole, and you are safe to rest in that wholeness.